What's going on, family? What's going on? It's your brother Divine Prospect. It's another Freestyle Friday session being brought to you live by Kingdom Harbinger Ministries, aka KHM. And we're about to get started shortly, so I'm gonna wait for the chat to fill up and for everybody to come on board, and then we're gonna get started. All right, we're gonna get started shortly. All right. All right. Oh, Van Coates, I'm gonna work on going over that this weekend. All right, so just bear with me. I'm gonna work on going over that this weekend. Okay. More than likely Sunday, because the Sabbath I try to rest. So Sunday I'm gonna work on getting onto that. All right. All right. So shout out to my brother KB, sister Yapa, Kalaya, Kimberly M, Kadar Scales, said shalom from North Carolina High Point. All right. Shout out to Lucky Lou. Shout out to Judah Supreme, Sandra Curry. What's going on, family? Make sure you guys hit that thumbs up button as you're walking in. Make sure you share this video. All right. Share this video, hit the thumbs up. And if you're brand new, hit that subscribe button. All right. Okay. So while we waiting for people, anytime, Van, while we waiting for people to join in, a couple of things. I want to give you guys some updates. All right. So I'm gonna show you. Matter of fact, let me show this to you guys real quick so you guys can take a look at it, because I didn't get to post it yet, which is crazy. Because I didn't even finalize everything, but give me 1 second. 1 second. All right, let me grab this. Okay. Y'all got to forgive me if anybody's reached out to me and hasn't heard from me yet. Like I said, I get tons of messages all the time, and if I go a day without checking messages, it's probably like the worst thing. You know what I'm saying? Because I get so backlogged. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not ignoring anybody. You know what I'm saying? And it's okay to follow up with me. It's fine to do that, right? But just know that if I haven't responded to you, it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's because either I didn't get to it yet, or I haven't seen it. You know what I'm saying? So just bear with me. I got y'all. Just bear with me. All right. Bear with me. All right. So let me show this to you guys real quick. I want to show two things. Well, one thing to you guys real quick. All right. So I mentioned to you guys that next Sunday is an event. It's a Hebrew Israelite event next Sunday. It's called Cry Out. Okay. It's going to be in Virginia Beach, VA. All right. So let me go ahead and show you all the flyer so you guys can see the flyer. All right. So just give me a second. Let me grab that flyer for you guys so you guys can see it. All right. So the organization, which is called For the Culture, they have reached out to me about the event, invited me out to the event, and wanted to partner with KHM in, promoting the event and so forth. So I'm gonna go ahead and show it to you guys here on the screen so you guys can see it. All right, this is it right here. All right, it's For the Culture presents Cry Out 2020. If my people humble, pray, seek, turn. That's going to be August 2nd, 2020, Virginia Beach, Virginia. All right, so it's not this Sunday. It's the following Sunday coming up. All right, the number's on there if you want more information. That's 757-327-3172. All right, so if you're in Virginia Beach, Virginia, Norfolk area, or any place close to this region, definitely call that number, or you can email me at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. Okay. And we'll give you more details about this event. So pretty much what it is it's a beckoning call for Israelites to come together to humble themselves, pray, seek, and turn to the Most High. They're going to have vending opportunities there as well. They're going to have some speakers there as well. But it's just a unified, collective effort to come together in humility and seek the Most High, right? So that way we can assist each other with turning away from the things that are driving us away from our culture and from the Creator, and being able to work together, right, as brothers and sisters in this walk and pushing towards the mark. You know what I'm saying? So it's a really, really awesome event. I've been asked to come out and speak, and I'll also be vending there as well. So the only thing is I have not finalized everything yet, but I'm still working on that, right? So I haven't finalized anything yet. If I do go, which more than likely I'll be there, or people representing KHM will be there, it'll be from Saturday to Monday, right? So from Saturday to Monday, I'll be there at this event. So if you guys are in that area, please come out and patronize the event. Okay. The address, let me go ahead and give you guys the address, because there is an address for the event. And you guys can sign up on Eventbrite. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and drop the link for the Eventbrite in the chat. And I'm gonna go show you guys the Eventbrite here in 1 second. All right. That's the Eventbrite in the chat. So let me go ahead and bring that up on the screen so you guys can see it. All right, so this is it right here. Okay, so again, the link is in the chat. I also will put the link in the description box below. But the link is in the chat, so you can go ahead and click on that. It gives you the location, which is Moonden Point Park, 2001 Pefley Lane, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23457. So that's the address. I know I've been getting a lot of people asking me for details on it. I told them that I would let you know today on this live stream. The location, the time is from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. So it's only a couple of hours, right? So it's not going to be an all day thing. But then after 3 p.m., there's going to be the overflow, right? It's going to be the after party. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be a get together or whatnot, you know what I'm saying, for a dinner or something like that. So if I go, I'll be out there all day Saturday. I'll be there the day before, and I'll be flying out on Monday. But I'll be there also all day Sunday, right? So if anybody's in the Virginia area, you want to kick it, whatever, that's cool. Now, remember, we don't have a KHM Virginia yet, but there's people in Virginia that support KHM, and they're unofficial members. But if you're interested in joining KHM, if you come out here, we'll have a vending table out there. We can intake your information, onboard you real quick, and, get you guys locked in Virginia. You know what I'm saying? But we will be in Baltimore, D.C. soon as well, which is going to be part of the DMV area, right? So we're going to hit Virginia, and then we're going to hit Baltimore. We're probably going to hit Baltimore at the end of August or beginning of September. I'm not sure yet. We're going to see Baltimore, DC is like those safe cities right now in regards to COVID-19. So I know the turnout will be pretty good. But here's the details, right? And the host that reached out to me, Brother Daweed, he and his team put this together, right? And they have, what the purpose of the event here is here on the screen, right? So, it's going on, says, that means the only way to guarantee longevity and peace of the house and cities to have the Most High as our ally. The economic, social, educational, etc. plans are all necessary, but they are the additional floors upon the spiritual foundation. With all that said, we must call on the only one with full control in the manner that he commanded to be petitioned with the unified genuine cry of humility, repentance, submission, and the intent to walk out his instructions. We'll be coming together to have the voices of our community, our elders, entreat our Father. We will praise and worship him and hear from those he has called to lead us back to the path of righteousness. This is the generation. This is our time. This is the way. Hallelujah. Our Akeem and Yah, DivineProspect, and Moray Yeftach will be present. All right. So again, you guys can go there, and the link is in the chat. It will also be in the description. It's called Cry Out 2020. Again, if you guys really want to come out to an event where brothers and sisters are going to be unified, coming together to seek the Most High and build a comradeship between the sisterhood and brotherhood, the familyhood, this is the event to come to, So if you're in Virginia, you have to be here, right? Because, you know, I know a lot of people ask me about Virginia. I'm like, I don't know a lot of events that's going out in Virginia, but here's one right here, right? So if you can make it, please come out. Like I said, you can email me or you can call the number that's there. This is the Eventbrite. So click on there. It's free to go in. You can make donations if you want, but it's free to go in. So this is open for you guys here. Okay. All right. So this is an event. So again, if you're in Virginia, man, you need to be here. You need to be here. This is going to be an awesome event. I already know. You know what I'm saying? I already know the brothers and sisters involved in putting this together. It's going to be a great event. So you need to be there. All right. So I'm going to try to throw up a brief promo video on this channel. All right. So you guys can check it out. But this is the event for y'all if you are in Virginia. All right. So if you're coming in here, hit that thumbs up button, hit that thumbs up. All right. I'm gonna get some shout outs. Before I give shout outs, I see, you know, trolls automatically come in here and just get busy. You know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna address one of the trolls. And again, the platform is open. You know what I'm saying? Any of the trolls, like I said, trolls' lives matter too. You know what I'm saying? TLM, I want to give them an opportunity as well. So any trolls in the chat, if you guys have any grievances with me, KHM, or whatever the case may be, Israelite community, whatever, you're welcome to come on a panel and have a discussion. Okay? We always open the panel to y'all. If you can make it past, you know, my people's in the chat, if you can make it past them, then we can get you on the panel. Okay? Because you just come in here just going crazy. And we get started. So so again, and this is just me saying this presumptuously. I don't know if somebody's in troll yet, and so I engage them. Okay. But here I see the brother Mikhail Banks. And Mikhail Banks, I hope you are not trolling. Okay. I'm just saying trolls lives matter. And if there's any trolls in the chat, you guys can definitely come on the panel, have a discussion. I have no problem with that. But he says, is it true that you facilitate groups to engage in polygyny? I have no clue what you're talking about. What are you talking about? Where are you getting this from? My brother, I have no clue what you're talking about. I really don't. All right. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to kind of give me some backdrop in the chat before I bring you on the panel. But I have no clue what you're talking about. Where are you getting this from? Where are you getting this from? I have no clue where you're getting this from. All right, so let me give my shout out to my peoples in here. My brother Jamar Gale. Shout out to my brother Jamar Gale. You go and subscribe to his channel. Brother has great interviews on his channel, man. I support the brother. All right, Lady Watt in the building. Benjamin Dire Wolf, Gen 4927. The Swooviest in the building. Shalom Seraphim Ascending in the building. Deborah Newsom, what's going on? Amiel Ban Yasharala. Yashab Awam. My sister Gail, Remarkable Ministry. Shout out to my sister Gail. That sister helped to make the Dallas event possible, man. So shout out to that sister, man. I really appreciate that sister for looking out. Shout out to Truth Keepers. Shalom, Judah Supreme. When can we pay for the shirts ordered in Dallas? You can pay for them after the Sabbath, right? So tomorrow's the Sabbath. So after the Sabbath, you can feel free to pay for them. All right. So then do that after the Sabbath. All right, my brother. All right. So Judah Supreme, you one of the brothers that came out to Dallas. I see a little bit, your thumbnail a little bit. I can't see it very clearly, but I think you're one of the brothers that came out to Dallas, and thank you for coming out. I'm gonna mention that in 1 second. All right. After I give the shout outs. Shout out to Sister V Love in the building. In Search of Yah, what's going on? Jack Max, aka my brother Sean, what's going on? Sky Village Faction, what's up? Mikhail Banks, again, bruh. You got to give me some more backdrop. I don't know what you're talking about. All right. Shout out to Stacks 2296. Avarice in the building. Hiel Yisrael. What's going on, my brother? Yardenia Strong. She says, Shalom, Divine, and Shalom family. Let me bring this down. She said, thanks for posting the Nick Cannon video. I've shared it with so many people. No problem. I got a hold of it. And I said, you know, I was kind of debating whether I should put it on my channel or not. But I'm like, I'm going to put it on the channel. So I just threw it up for you guys. You know what I'm saying? So it's about an hour and 15 minutes. And I cut out maybe about 10 minutes of it. You know what I'm saying? In the beginning and maybe a minute or two towards the end. But the bulk of it is there. Okay. The bulk of it is there. All right. So no problem. You know what I'm saying? I'm here for the family. Shout out to my brother Get Wise, aka James. Amun Ra Baneb Dijet says, who were the Saracens group that fought against Romans and Persian historically? Are you asking me who they are as far as ethnicity wise? Saracens, that was what they were labeled, right? That was their ethnicity. So what additional details are you requesting? Let me know. All right. Shout out to Jenna Beer Direct, what's going on? Gather of Nations in the building. JD Israel, my sister Consuelo F in the building. Taurus 60, Shalom. Vincent Lemon, Shalom. Raelion T, what's up? Avrice said, review the capital punishment video. You definitely demystify many things that pertain to the Messiah for me. Thank you so much, my brother. That is definitely our goal here. All right, to make it more concrete for the family, so that way you can get strictly to what the purpose and intent of the text is. All right. Shout out to my brother Ben Robinson in the building. One mind, one body, Yah spirit. What's going on? Jetson Silencio, Shalom. All right. Virtue, what's going on? Malak Daweed, what's up? What's up? I'm glad you enjoyed that, sis. No problem, Yapa. Of course. All right. Yeah, do that one mind, one body, and have a great day at work. All right. Take it easy out there. Okay. So I'm still waiting on this random question, man. Yes, you was the brother that came down from Oklahoma. I remember you, Judah. I appreciate that. All right. I appreciate that, my brother. I'm gonna talk about Dallas in 1 second. So Michael Banks. Okay. I don't know what that question means. What are you talking about? Can you please give us some context to what you're talking about? Give us some background to what you're talking about. Shout out to Kenesha Morgan in the building. All right. What's up? I don't know what you're talking about. I have no clue what you're talking about. Shout out to my brother Virtuous, Reckless Animosity in building. Virtue, how do you perceive Shaitan's role within the Bible? Well, he's an adversary, right? But he's an adversary that has been unleashed by the Most High. He is, his purpose is to oppose the things of Most High, but that's the Most High's will. The Most High allows him to do those things. So Shaitan just means an adversary, and it was not one consistent entity. Because Shaitan can be a myriad of different individuals, okay, entities, ontological entities in the text. It could be Baal, right? It could be Molech, right? It could be let me see who else. Belial. It could be Belial, right? It could be a host of different individuals. It's not just one entity. You understand what I'm saying? So Shaitan is any adversary that's been allowed to oppose the Most High for his greater will. You know what I'm saying? So that's what that is there. You know what I'm saying? And Shaitan can even be a human adversary. It's not just an ontological, ethereal, supernatural being, right? It could be a human adversary. Okay. So what was that? Torio TMH. The Ugaritic texts keep messing me up, brother. I don't want to believe I am worshiping a Canaanite god. Well, you're not worshiping a Canaanite god. I don't know why you would feel that way. So you're saying when you read the Ugaritic text, you feel that it's talking about a Canaanite god? Is that what you're saying? Because that's not the impression you should be getting from reading Ugaritic text. Ugaritic text just helps to give some background on some details that is not there in the scriptures, right? And when you watch the lecture series that I did, I'm very particular on how I disseminate the information from the Ugaritic text. All right. So I don't want it to mess you up, my brother. And you're saying a Canaanite god. Well, Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh is the deity that reigns from Northwest Arabia all the way into what we would call Aram, you know what I'm saying, or Syria. So that whole region was believed to be the region of El. So any entities that was in this region is going to be region of El. I'll give you an example, right? So when we go to Bereshit 9, right, where we see a situation where Ham, is cursed by Noah. Well, Ham is not cursed, but Canaan is cursed because Ham was blessed in the beginning of the chapter. So, Noah cannot curse that which Yah has blessed. And I did a whole lesson on that, right? But ultimately, he says to Shem, blessed be the power of Shem. So Israelites wasn't around at that time. So there was a power over Shem. And where is the majority of the region where Shem settled? Shem settled in what was politically called the ancient Near East. Okay, Ham was also in the ancient Near East, right? So it has nothing to do with worshiping a Canaanite god per se. That was the deity that was worshipped in that region. El is the chief deity of that region. You know what I'm saying? So that's just how it is. You know what I'm saying? There's no need to be spooked out by it, my brother. You know what I'm saying? But if you watch the series, I kind of explain that. All right. Well, you're right, Torio. But Torio, did you see that series that I have on YouTube? It's called El Shaddai, Yod Hey Wafe, El Elyon, Three of a Kind, or One and the Same. If you have not watched that lecture series, I have a playlist of it. Go to the playlist and watch that. And once you watch that, we demystify and we remove the spookiness out of the Ugaritic element in regards to Canaan and El and his relationship and all of this stuff. All right. So if you watch part 1, that's great. Watch the rest. Watch 2, 3, and 4. All right. So by the time you get to the end of the series, hopefully it'll help to, demystify that stuff. All right. So Ascent of Phoenix, shout out to Ascent of Phoenix, asked me, Divine, do you subscribe to the teaching that Shem and Melchizedek are the same individual as taught in the Sefer Yashir? No, I do not teach that. That is something that came much later. We don't have a very early antiquity of that particular reference. Okay, that is more of a modern reference. When I say modern, I'm talking about what we call AD reference. All right. Okay. Yes, Robbie. Thank you so much, my brother Robbie. He said it puts archaeology together with script. It does, and it helps to explain it. All right. Jenna be a direct says, watch all 4, very enlightening. I'm glad you enjoyed it. My sister Noelle Yah, what's going on, sister, in the building? All right, Sean 105, I see ya. Blue Star Transportation, shalom, fam. Do you have precepts to Deuteronomy 23 and 8? All right, so before we get to the questions, so I see y'all got a lot of questions. Before we get to the questions, let me first talk about KHM Dallas. So I went out there on Friday. We had a street campaign, okay, in Dallas. When I got out to Dallas, when I went to the airport, it was like was not crowded at all. Right. So I knew, like, man, this is an indicator of what to expect in regards to the turnout. When I got there Friday, I had a couple of people come out to help with the street campaign. And then we bumped into Sakai that was out there. And then there was March, a protest that was going on at the same time. It was really crazy. And then I had a discussion with 2 Catholics. Right. So I'm going to show you this clip real quick. Again, it's a draft. It's not finished because I have to get the audio tuned. Okay, I got to get the audio tuned, but I'm gonna give you some insight so you can see some of the discussion that I had with these 2 white Catholics. It was a couple, right? They were very well off as far as financial, and then the actual church that they went to was right down the street. You know what I'm saying? But they were pretty much started the conversation off talking about the Trinity and then transitioned into them inquiring about who we are and what we're doing out here, right? So I had to kind of find a tactful way to disseminate that information to them so they can absorb it, you know what I'm saying, without automatically turning them off. And it was a great build. And when you guys see the full video, you're going to be like, wow, this is great. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to play some of it for you guys. Again, bear with the audio. It was recorded on my cell phone. You know what I'm saying? A brother recorded it for me on my cell phone. And there was a lot going on. We in the middle of the street. You know what I'm saying? A lot of stuff is going on. So car rides over here doing anything. The march is on here doing anything. We were right by the street. So this car zooming up and down. You know what I'm saying? So I'm working on getting the audio tuned so that way it can enhance my dialogue with them and try to tune everything else out. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and play it for you guys so you guys can take a look at it. All right. So let me go ahead and put it on the screen. Give me 1 second. And y'all let me know if y'all can make out what's being said. All right, just let me know. Hit 1 if you can make out what's being said. All right, but I'm about to play it right now for y'all. All right, there it is on the screen. All right, so let me go ahead and play it. What's the basic value when you give it to somebody because somebody knows they're really
a set of beliefs and traditions surrounding your religion.
So I'm here. I'm asking him, how do you define religion?
What if we learn that a lot of these things are native culture?
Right. So I said, what if we learn that a lot of these things that's called religion were actually native and cultural to the people?
They were not things that were taught. I'll give you an example. What's your lineage go back to?
Well, so I get where you're going. So, and I've always been curious about this because Judaism, Jewish, is both a religion and a nationality.
So she says, I've always been curious about this. She said Judaism and Jewish is a nationality and a religion. This is what she's saying.
Whereas I'm American and Catholic.
She said, whereas I'm American and Catholic, right?
Correct. And I've always been curious about that because you can be Jewish, but not really be Jewish.
Correct.
Or you can be Jewish, but not Jewish.
So when you look in the Old Testament, we'll call that the law, right? That was a theocratic prophecy. Right?
I said, so when you look at what's called the Old Testament, some people call it the law. I said that was a theocratic system.
Right, so a theocratic system is the deities at the head of the chief of state, and then there's subservience that work under him.
So you have the deity as the head, chief of state, and you have subservient servants underneath him.
Carry out as well, right? So that theocracy that was established was designed to keep the children of Israel in alignment with their natural environment. Right?
So I said that theocracy that was established when they went into the land was in alignment with how things work or how the order was in their natural environment.
And they were told to be Kodesh, set apart from the other nations. Correct. Because the Philistines would eat pork, they would eat dogs, and they would have all the cultural claims, right?
So he brought up the diet, and I was explaining how the Philistines were opportunistic eaters that would eat dogs and pigs and other things like that.
So what we're simply saying is, before it became state-sponsored, because Judaism didn't reform until the reforms of Josiah, Hezekiah first and Josiah, and then when the Judeans went into captivity, they stayed in captivity for 70 years, they returned and came back, and they came back and had to reestablish the law. But now they're under the offices of the rule of the Persians during that time. What we're saying is that before any of that happened, they had a culture. Or it was a state-sponsored religion. And we're trying to get back to what that culture is. Because
that culture was based on the words, the Mosaic words?
Well, yeah. So the elements you see in there, right? Like an example is if you kept using the employment situation, like employee, employer. So if you are my employee and you work for me, I have to pay you wage when sunset hits. Once the sun hits, there's no artificial light. Everybody going indoors and then come activities indoors. I'm supposed to pay you. Is that religious or is that a civil duty that you are to give somebody else who is a citizen of that nation?
So what I asked them, if y'all can hear it, I don't know if y'all can hear it or not. If you can hear it, hit 1. But pretty much what I asked them is I gave them an example of one of the ordinances that's in Torah, which says that if you have somebody that works for you, right, you are to pay him when the sun sets, right? Pay him his wages that he's earned for the day when the sun sets, right? So I'm asking them, is that religious or is that a civil duty that you are obligated to perform as a citizen of that nation, right? So I'm trying to give them an example of what Torah culture is, all right?
Well, I think in the early days, there wasn't a massive distinction, right?
And I'm glad you see them because you have the civil element, you have what people call the ritual element, right? And then you have the element which is moral, right? So moral, civil, and then you have that other element. Now, so I was telling him, I said, he said, well, in the old times, there's really no distinction between civic duty and religion. And I said, well, you can kind of break it down to the moral element, the ritual element, and, moral, ritual, and the civil element. You know what I'm saying? Like I was trying to explain to him how, it could be broken down, how it can be seen. The reason why I say this is because when we look at the text from a religious perspective, we'll say, oh, those are legalists. The Old Testament, the Jews, what they were doing was legalism, right? It didn't become legalism until post-exile.
Like the Sadducees,
So like Pharisees, etc. Prior to that, it was their natural culture that they would do in their environment before they were removed out of the environment. Now, if you take somebody out of the environment, that's and I know this is kind of hypersensitive, but I'll use as an example African Americans, right? On the west coast of Africa, we had a particular diet. We had a particular ritual performance. We got here. We lost our language. Some of our culture stayed in the African, but most people don't allow the practice. Right. So you're taking us out of our native environment and you're forcing us to adopt a system that is foreign to us in order for us to survive. So we're saying is, well, what would we do? If we look at us, we can trace our lineage all the way back to the Western Africa.
Is there any DNA evidence or the two generations?
So now he's asking me, is there any DNA evidence in regards to us being Israelites, right?
So when you look at DNA, you have your Y DNA, right? You have MT DNA, your mitochondrial DNA, and then you have your autosomal. When you look at the autosomal, that's a portion of your mother and your father, and that has more mutations over time. It's not an inherited thing, unless you talk about the Pope, because he's like your Christ.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. But if it was culture, so
there's some potential in the future that you could better establish the claim through DNA history.
So through DNA, right, through various migrations, and trying to use circumstantial evidence to substantiate our clause, right? So our clause is
or looking at commonality between you and people that
do is any validity to their claim. So there's an organization I'm a part of. It's called the International. Because there were things in their own theses and their books and articles that were written that they ignored, and there's other people in academics who read over their books and wondering why didn't you touch this, touching that. So what we're trying to do is bring that data to the surface and say, let's deal with it. Put these cards on the table, let's play with it, because what are the ramifications if we happen to be Israelites? The fact that you have...
I said, what are the ramifications if we happen to be Israelites?
Had a poll that went out, and the poll was saying that if we were encountered any...
So I'm telling them about Dum Divaris, or the doctrine of discovery, the papal bull. Now, mind you, they're Catholics.
Savages who were not converted over to Christianity, then you're allowed to stake claim in that land.
I said, so what states pretty much, and I'm giving an oversimplification, but it states that if you go into uncharted land by European nations, and there are people that are there, or savages, and they are not Christians, then you have the obligation to stake claim in that land without their permission or via treaty, right? So I'm trying to break it down for him, because when I was speaking to them, they didn't know what Dum Divaris was, or the doctrine of discovery. They were unaware of these things, right? So I had to kind of like educate them while I was talking to them about certain things, as well as trying to explain our plight. You know what I'm saying?
Very long time.
Yeah. The unity to protest, there has to be a purpose and there has to be a plan. Right. Because the protest is just speaking against something that's adverse to your community, right? But in order for you to actually have a voice, when Black Lives Matter was brought before Hillary Clinton a couple of years ago, after they made all that rah-rah, she sat down with them and said, okay, look, some of you are the man. They didn't have them. There was no end game. So what we're saying is autonomy is our end game. Every other ethnic group, and I'm not saying what just like from some East Indians, Arabs, Koreans, they have a situation where they are autonomous. I'm originally from New York, and in East New York, there's a Jewish community. If you walk in that community, everything is written in Hebrew. Right. When you call for the bus, the school bus, it's written in Hebrew. When you go to their university, it's written in Hebrew. When the police come, their names in Hebrew. It's like, this is New York City. But what they've learned is that autonomy is the only way that they can control the environment where their people live and keep anything adverse out that seeks to undermine it.
So pretty much what I was breaking down for them was about the Jewish community. And I said, if you was to go to a real Jewish community anywhere in the U.S., you would think you in Israel. Everything's written in Hebrew. I said, if you call, the ambulance is written in Hebrew. You send your kids to school. The school bus is going to have Hebrew on it. When you go to university, it's going to have Hebrew on it. When you go to the senior center, it's going to be Hebrew on it. Everything's going to be Hebrew. And I said, the reason why it's like that is because they understand that autonomy is the only way for you to achieve control over your community and keep any adversarial forces out of the community that seek to undermine and destroy it. And I was trying to simply explain to him that the Black community, we do not have that, right? We don't. You don't see no small Black businesses setting up shop in a Jewish community. You're not going to see that. You're not going to see a lot of Black business set up shop in an East Indian community or an Arab community. You're just not going to see that, right? So I said, everybody else comes into the Black community to capitalize off of us, right? But we are not taking that same approach and or forming a collective where we're keeping these other groups out of our community, so that way our dollar circulates even further, so we can get to a point where we can establish ourselves economically before we can do any business with other ethnic groups. right? So I'm trying to break it down to him, explain to him that the end game of at least what we're doing at KHM as Israelites is to install autonomy in the community. But you can't do that without the roots, and the culture is the roots. That ties you into the soil, which is the Most High. And the deeper you get into that, the stronger the trunk, which is the community, can be. And then the branches, which has the leaves, that helps with the photosynthesis to bring nutrients into the entire stump. So I'm trying to break it down and explain these things to them, you know what I'm saying, and try to also assess, you know, what they're able to absorb, what they're not. So it was a really interesting dialogue, I would say, extremely dynamic, you know what I'm saying, off the dome. And it's just me talking to two white Catholics, you know, a couple who decide to step up to the camp, start the conversation off with Trinity. And after I talked to them for the Trinity about 15 minutes, diverged it into actually talking about why we're here and explaining it to them. And after I was done with them, they was like, we never knew this about your community at all. They said we will walk by all the time, see you guys saying A, B, and C on the call, but we never knew this about your community. So what I simply want to demonstrate from that is that through diplomacy and tact, you can actually reach these people, not people that's coming up to the camp yelling racial slurs and acting crazy, but people who of other ethnic groups that are genuinely interested about what it is that we're doing, and educate them. See, that's how you become the light. You become the light when you're able to shine within the darkness of ignorance and bring enlightenment. That is our goal. Because a lot of these groups, and I've noticed from doing street campaign stuff like that, they're ignorant into what is actually going on around them. Even when I was talking to them about the things being done with the Catholic Church, they had no clue about it. And I gave them references about it, even going into the catechism and pulling things out of the catechism. They had no clue about that. Even in the beginning, you'll see when we're talking about the Trinity, he's speaking without references to any scriptures. He tries to make references to scriptures and he can't even remember some of them. And every time I go to the scripture, he diverts away from scripture. It's very interesting. And again, this guy is extremely intelligent because he owns some kind of IT business or whatever. And his son works for him. He kept using that as an example. And his wife, she has a good job. They are very affluent. Okay. I'm not saying they're the richest people, but they have money, right? And if you look down where I'm at on the screen, right down further into the screen, which is going further down, you'll see that there's a Catholic church that they go to down there. You know what I'm saying? But the thing is that what I try to explain to our community is that everybody has a role to play. My job is to convey our purpose through tact and diplomacy, right? Because we have to educate them, because a lot of times they have miseducation. That's why they have their biases, right? That's why they have their apprehension, right? This is why they have their, you know, the stigmas that they have about us, is because they don't have anybody that's able to articulate and explicate what our position is in a manner that is not aggressive, right? Because you can be passive aggressive with people and still get the point across. Is you just have to assess who it is you're talking to. And because I've seen that they were genuine and that they really wanted to understand, this is why you see me talking to them like this and having this approach. Wow, the Sakari brothers is right there talking back and forth with these protesters, you know what I'm saying, who are black and white people, you know what I'm saying? So it was a very, very interesting dynamic that night. And the fact that I had this opportunity to speak to them, just like I've spoken to other white people when I did my street campaign on Juneteenth, you know, not Juneteenth, excuse me, July 3rd. And then when we went out on Juneteenth to do our protests, you just got to understand, like, you cannot take the same approach with everybody. Some people are willing to hear what you have to say, right? Some people don't want to hear what you have to say. Some people automatically have a wall up, a stereotypical wall up, and they don't care what you say to them. You know what I'm saying? Some people want to argue, debate, whatever, but then some people are genuine and they want to hear. And as you can see from their disposition, they're learning, right? They're probably like, wow, you know, this Negro know a lot. You know what I'm saying? This black kid or whatever. I don't know how they perceive me, right? I don't want to say it's something bad, but you can tell that they were in tune to the things that I was saying. They were listening. They wasn't rushing to cut me off or walk away. Like, they actually stood there, and we was there for almost an hour just talking, and they were listening and they were engaging. And, you know, I was able to hold control of the discussion and dialogue because of the information I was bringing out that they probably was not aware of and never heard it like that. And I wanted to do this because, again, I saw that they were being genuine. Okay. So, I mean, like I said, sometimes this is the action you got to take. You have to be proactive. Okay. You can't be reactionary all the time. You got to be proactive sometimes. And in doing so, now at the end of the discussion, I told them, now go share this information. Now that you understand who we are, why we're here, our play, our end game, all of that, share it with your family member, friend. They said, yeah, we definitely going to tell them about it. And they asked for, you know, the KHM flyers and stuff we had there. They got the, you know, Freestyle Friday sessions on it and everything like that. And they reached out to people and they told people. And guess what? Some of those people have reached out to me and said, we want to know more about what it is you guys do. You see how that works? Just because it is one conversation, we reached so many people who otherwise wouldn't care less about what it is we're doing on the street corner. And you never know who one of those people can be a possible ally when we may need it. And it's not like we were trying to recruit them and all of that. It's just, you never know how you can establish an ally simply by having a conversation like this, where both parties are listening, both parties are engaging, and both parties are kind of building. And that was my goal, to kind of convey that to them. But you'll see. So when we get this audio cleanup in this video, and we get it posted on the channel, you guys will check it out. It'll be on Patreon first for about 72 hours, and then it'll be released publicly on YouTube. So if you want to get this when we release it, sign up for our Patreon, www.patreon.com/DivineProspect, and you guys will definitely get a part of this and also the other exclusives that we have on our Patreon. All right. So that was Friday night. And again, that was to me, that was a great session that we have. I thought that was an excellent session, that we was able to meet so many people while we was out there. I was talking to the Dallas locals and everything like that. And it was good. It was really good. You know what I'm saying? And how you build. And again, you know, I don't know, like, you know, our community, we're extremely bitter. We're upset. We're angry because we're being oppressed, or we have been oppressed. And, you know what I'm saying, the things that's going on in our community and the systematic, you know, I would say removal of us, you know, from our culture, our history, and, you know, oppression and suppression that goes on, and what happened to our ancestors here. So there's a lot of anger built up. There's a lot of bitterness, a lot of resentment. There's a lot of praying for avengement for the blood of our ancestors and the crimes committed against us. And I understand it. Trust me. I wholeheartedly understand it. I never lose you know, sight of that. You know, if you follow me on social media, I bring these things up and I ask these questions. But at the end of the day, who has more power over you? Yah's love, or the issues and problems that you have and that you suffer? Which one rules over your heart, over your lab, over the center of you? Unless you are in alignment with Yah's love, you can never have control over the negative emotions. You can't. So in order for you to have power over that, you have to yield to the healing process that Yah speaks that he's going to do with his people. Yes, there is righteous indignation for the crimes committed against our people. You're right. And there's a time and a place to vent that. But when you are given an opportunity to speak to Gentiles or other ethnic groups in regards to who we are, why we're there, and what we are trying to accomplish, you must learn to be tactful. And if that is not your skill, then you hand it off to somebody else. Because like I said, you never know who can be a willing ally, right? To provide us the resources we may need, the clearance we may need. These people may assist with these things so that way we can get what we need to continue to sustain and govern and protect our community. Okay. All right. So Saturday night, you know, we had a get together. It was great. Those of you part of Patreon, you saw some of the behind the scenes. Let me give a shout out to REFERRAL. Thank you for the donation, my brother. I greatly appreciate that. Thank you so much. All right. So Saturday we had to get together. Again, I had maybe about 20 something people reach out to me and say they couldn't make it. Right. They was telling me this before I even got to Dallas. And I said, okay, I'll live stream it. So that's why I live streamed the event. We had about 15 to 20 people that turned out. And it wasn't too bad, but it was just the fact that we had to rent out a much bigger room because almost every hotel in Texas for their meeting rooms had to operate at 50% capacity. So I mean, it was crazy. And I just felt bad. So many people was hitting me up saying they couldn't come through. They couldn't make it. You know, some of them had other obligations. Some of them was because of COVID-19. So the turnout wasn't what I anticipated, but the people that did show up was good quality people, right? So hopefully you guys was able to see that session. If you didn't, it's on this channel. Check it out. All right. And then Sunday we had the luncheon. We had the get together. We ate at Uncle Julio's, which is like a Tex-Mex restaurant. And we had great food, great discussions. And then I flew out that evening. You know what I'm saying? So shout out to KHM Dallas. We got people out there now. We're establishing everything. I'm following up with those individuals over the next couple of days to lock them into the organization. And then we're going to grow Dallas. Okay. And then set our sights on the next city. Okay. So thank you to everybody who's watching this, who showed up for KHM Dallas. I appreciate y'all. Those of you in Dallas that did reach out to me. All right. Stay in touch with me. I could still bring you guys on board, give you guys a virtual session. No problem. But Dallas was cool, man. I love the city, man. I look forward to going back to Dallas, man. Dallas was a cool city. I wish I had more leisure time, but next time I will. You know what I'm saying? Next time I definitely will. All right. So I just wanted to get Dallas out the way first. I want to give you guys some insight into the video that I'm working on with me talking to the two Catholics, which I think will be extremely providential to our community and beneficial. All right. So I want to make sure I get that out. And, you know, it is what it is, family. So, you know, as of late, there's been some individuals, you know, who are constant antagonists in regards to the Israelite community. Some of them I know personally, some of them I don't know personally. And we talk about people from the conscious community, people from the Christian apologetic community, who are all putting our identity under scrutiny, which I'm glad they are, right? I appreciate when individuals put us under that pressure. You know why? Because they don't realize they're squeezing coal. They don't realize that. So you allow the pressure to be applied, and at the right moment, you crack to show them the gem, which is the diamond. But see, you never know what's in you until you're squeezed, until a pressure is applied. How do you handle that pressure? You can't react to everything. You have to be proactive. You have to make moves that they don't even see happening. So in response to the people who are mentioning me or mentioning Israelite groups and individuals in regards to our particular disposition and stance, I'm going to have a response over time, right? Just because they're talking about it now doesn't mean I'm automatically going to respond. I'm going to be calculated with it. So I have a presentation coming up that I'm doing with the brother Shema, who's been on this channel before. And we're going to do a presentation where we're going to provide more circumstantial evidence with some direct evidences here and there in regards to who we are as Israelites and why we make this claim. I'm going through the oral traditions. I'm going to the customs, the migrations. We're going to touch on DNA. We're going to touch on all of that and just give y'all some insight. And this insight that we're giving is going to be extremely open. So that way people who are dissenters, people who take the position where they are opposing it and they're against it can truly see some of the data that we're working with when we make these claims. Okay. And I'm not expecting them to convert or to say, yeah, that's it. I'm simply trying to show them the research methodology behind the claims that are being made. This is not just something I'm pulling out of thin air or I'm taking on because other people have taught it before. I'm not. Okay. So let me show you guys something. I'm going to show this and then I'm going to take more questions. All right. Essence of Ebony 0 to 9 says, do you have a day where you go over the history of the people? What do you mean by that, sis? When you say the history of the people, tell me, let me know what you mean by that. Tell me what you mean by that. Shout out to 617. Let's get it in the building. And more 6 figures XI in the building. Cheryl, King Anubis. King Anubis, it would be great if you was here, man. I plan to be out your way soon, sometime early next year. You know what I'm saying? But if you go back and you check out my channel, you'll see that there's some videos on there that have much higher video production quality. It's just that I don't have that team around me all the time. You know, I don't have access to them all the time. So unfortunately, you know, you may see some material that doesn't have that finished video production quality, you know what I'm saying? But we're working on it, right? So I'm gonna work on having my own mobile studio with me. So whether I'm away or whether I'm in the street and something needs to be captured, we can be able to capture that dynamic discussion that's going on so that the quality is up to par to what you guys expect. I want that polish on it. You know what I'm saying? So we're working on that. All right. We're working on that. All right. Shout out to Ron Issa in the building. Sharon Hammonds in the building. What's going on? My brother Moray Shamat Talmud Yahoo in the building. What's going on? What's going on? All right. All right. My brother Chemo Ben Israel. Jordan's Cadet. What's going on? Roe the Chef. What's up? What's up, family? Thank y'all for joining in. I never seen what happened to Michael Banks. Michael Banks, where are you at? You said some random question. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Shema, that's something that we deal with all the time, man. Shout out to Sonetta, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm still cool with Sonetta, but I understand, you know, he has his grievances, his issues, whatever. He's interfaced with me several times. You can just type up his name and my name, and you see all the times I responded. He even put me in a hot seat several times, and I've addressed all these questions that he's made. I've showed some inconsistencies and so forth. So it's just they have a beef with religion, and their beefing with religion becomes a religion. Oh, we're not religious. Yes, you are. You are religious because you ritualistically and systematically premeditate attacking something because you feel that it's adverse to your livelihood. It's adverse to the survival of your community. And that's understood. I bang on religion too. But at the end of the day, I'm not making that a religion because it's something that you are tied to, that you are bound to. These brothers are bound to that. They bound to attacking these communities because they feel that it's attacking the Black community. So they're bound to it. So it becomes a religion. And they become religious. So I'm not bound to that. There's plenty of other stuff that's shared on this channel that has nothing to do with me attacking anybody. I'm very leery of people who make a name for themselves simply by keep attacking. I'm not saying Sonetta always attacks the Israelite community, but he has these waves from time to time, which he does, and he gets in that religious, dogmatic, stigmatized mentality, and he attacks. That's just what he does. That's his nature. Do you get mad at a dog if a dog happens to bark or bite? Why would you get mad? That's in a dog's nature. No matter how calm that dog's demeanor may be, that dog always has the potential to bark and bite. You cannot get mad. You accept it for what it is, right? And if that dog is your possession, then you make the most out of the situation. Or what you do is that you allow that nature to what? To sharpen on your character. You see, it's all about your journey. When you are addressing people that are outside of your sphere of influence, your sphere of livelihood, your sphere of your journey, they're not there. That's not where they're at. They're on a different path. Okay. So you cannot respond and be reactionary simply because they say something. And a lot of times in our community, we can be like that. You must calculate your moves, and you must make certain moves that no matter what they say about you and what they do, right? The moves you've made, they got to acknowledge it and say, wow, that was a good move. And this is, again, when I talk about the allies that give you access so you can do more. It's all strategic. All right. And this is how we have to move. Okay. So again, we're going to have a presentation. I want to share something with you guys real quick. So I'm gonna bring this up. I brought this up in one of the previous live streams that I did, but I want to bring this up. All right. So watch this. Thank you for that. Reckless animosity. So essence of ebony, what the brother's saying is that the people who have signed up for the Patreon, and shout out to all my patrons in the building. All right. They have access to a library of books from my personal library that I make available to them. They have access to that. And the things that you're speaking about is in those books. We have tons of references in it, books, articles, etc. Right. So if you want references to these things, you can go in and check it out. You know what I'm saying? Go in and check it out. You know what I'm saying? So it's there if you want to sign up, sis. It's worth every penny you invest into our ministry. And we give back not only through our Patreon, you give back for investing, but also things that we do in the community and what we do on this channel. All right. Shout out to Coy Walker. Shalom to you as well, my brother. All right. So I want to share this, right? And I shared this before. I want people to understand how to formulate an argument. All right. Your research methodology dictates how your arguments are formulated. Okay. This thing, there's a method to this madness. Okay. And when you are able to use quantitative data, qualitative data, and there's different approaches. So I'm gonna share this with y'all. All right, because I've shared this before, and I'm gonna throw this up on Patreon. Research methodology. I have postgraduate books on research methodology that I love to read all the time. It keeps me sharp in regards to my methodological approach to things. All right, and the reason why we use that approach, because we have some brothers and sisters that are out there that do not appreciate this approach. But what I simply say is the reason why I take an academic approach to my cultural studies, right, of what we call our inheritance, or whatever you want to say, whether we're looking at the non-material culture or material culture, right? It's because the objective is to remove the presuppositions that we have packed on over time, strip that away with an algorithm that you feed data in that process and give you an output that is indifferent of how you feel, and brings you to a particular conclusion that you can either accept or reject. And sometimes it's hard to accept it, but I accept it for what it is. So when you use this methodology to formulate your arguments, or even to establish a premise in which you base your conclusions off of, that's your hypothesis, and then that leads you to your thesis, and then that leads you to your conclusion and your premise and so forth. It's a method in which you do that. So you can navigate through the information out there, and you can be very stringent, filter it. So that way the end result is that which is as objectional as can be, and it's up to you to accept it in its objective state, or take that objectivity and relate it to something that you're trying to convey to the community. That is why we take this approach. That is why we teach those skills in this organization. Okay. Shout out to Yirmiyahu, Yehuda Ben Yasharal in the building. What's going on? Quincy White, shalom to you, my brother. All right. Shay Marbly says you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. And that's facts. All right. So I want to show you guys these various methodologies. And then once I show it to you, what I simply want to do is I want to explain to you one particular thing in which I will be presenting when we do this this lecture. It's going to be a presentation that we're going to do. We're going to promote it on this channel. I'm going to try to do it next month sometime. All right, y'all willing? But let me show you guys something. I want to show you guys something. I want to show you guys something. Give me a second. Let me show you guys something. All right. There we go. Let me show you guys this real quick. Where is it at? Let me find it. Let me find it. Let me find it. Let me find it. Is this it? Yes, this is it. All right. I want to show you guys this on this website. Okay. Because again, when it comes to these things, I mean, people use Wikipedia. I try to avoid Wikipedia. I'm not saying Wikipedia is bad. Wikipedia pretty much gives you a summary of data that's been collected, and they give you a review of that data and a presentation of that data. You go back to the footnotes and you fact check the sources. Okay. But when I give you things, I want to give it to you straight from universities. Okay. So check this out. Let me show you guys how to formulate better arguments and what that process is, right? Because when we respond to people that are opposing our worldview, what they respect is the academic approach to conveying your worldview, your position. That's what they respect. They might not agree with you, but they'll respect that. And not only that, they'll be able to see the cohesiveness, the coherent nature, and the acuteness in which we're able to defend where we're at. See, they want us to be savages with our information. They want us to be emotional, to be bitter, to be angry, because those are the things that they use to stigmatize us. Those are the things they use to hush us, to silence us, and marginalize us from the greater community. But what I try to do, I try to be that catalyst to change that in our community and say, look, there can be a different way. There's a million ways to skin a cat. I choose this method because it's sound, it's concrete, it's effective. And even if they disagree, they got to say, look, I respect the methodology. That's pretty good. So then you get them to a point where once they respect the methodology, now it opens them up to say, okay, let me consider this information that you're conveying. But let me show this with you guys on the screen. All right. This is from Purdue University. All right. Purdue Online Writing Lab, College of Liberal Arts. All right. It's called Organizing Your Arguments. All right. Let me zoom in. Some people may not be familiar with this. And if you're not, I'm about to school you right now. Right. I'm giving you free game. It says, in order for your argument to be persuasive, it must use an organizational structure that the audience perceives as both logical and easy to parse. 3 argumentative methods, the Talmine method, the classical method, and Rogerian method, give guidance for how to organize the points in an argument. Note that these are only 3 of the most popular models for organizing an argument. Now, just so you know, I've used these methods before, and I've used methods outside of these. I've used maybe about 10 to 12 different methods. And like I said, I will put the book out. If you guys want access to it, if you're not part of Patreon, email me a request, kingdomharbinger@gmail.com, and I'll email you my research methodology books. Or if you're part of the Patreon, it'll be loaded up for you guys to check out for free. Okay. It says, be sure to consult your instructor or defer to your assignment's instruction and directions if you're unsure which to use, if any. Now, these are things that's being taught in academia. These are the things that I pull and I infuse into the community and say, yo, use this tool, use that tool. Yeah, you got good information, good data, good point of view, whatever. But look, yo, put it through the rigorous process of research methodology so you can strip away anything from that information that shows your biases and put it through this objective, procedure. So that way the outcome is objective information that you can then interpret and provide a conclusion and then lead people back to the methodology. So I like to use an inductive, work from the ground up. Deductive is from a argument down. I work from the ground up to the argument and then I present it. So I'm gonna give you game. So when I provide information, conclusions on things, trust and believe I've put it through one of these research methodologies. And when I debate people, if we do a formal debate, they're going to see the entire process. I'll bring the entire process up. They're going to be like, damn, you put it through all of that before you. Yeah, that's how we get busy. So let's keep going. Right. The Talmine method. The Talmine method is a formula that allows writers to build a sturdy logical foundation for their arguments. First proposed by author Stephen Talmine in The Uses of Argument, 1958, the Talmine method emphasizes building a thorough support structure for each of an argument's key claims. The basic format for the Talmine method is as follows. The claim. In this section, you explain your overall thesis on the subject. In other words, you make your main argument. Data are the grounds. You should use evidence to support the claim. In other words, provide the reader with facts that prove your argument is strong. Warrant or the bridge. In this section, you explain why or how your data supports the claim. As a result, the underlying assumption that you build your argument on is grounded in reason. That's concrete faith. Backing, foundation. Here, you provide any additional logic or reasoning that may be necessary to support the warrant. Counterclaim. You should anticipate a counterclaim. Always anticipate a counterclaim. When I hear things, I see things, I'm anticipating these things. I need to hear them. Because once I hear it, I work through it. You must receive and accept. Don't get angry. Welcome it. It helps to strengthen your position. Your position is only as good as the counterclaims and the counter arguments. Always remember that. Don't avoid arguments that oppose your own. Instead, become familiar with the opposing perspective. Don't be easily dismissive of things. Receive it, hear it, and then test it. Okay. If you respond to counterclaims, you appear unbiased, and therefore you earn the respect of your readers. You may even want to include several counterclaims to show that you have thoroughly researched the topic. So when we talk about us being Israelites, right, through identity, there are major counterclaims to that from several opponents, right? Academia, people in the cultural community. So what I do is I listen to them. That's why you hear me mention Tudor Parfit and Edith Bruder. Those are people that are experts in African jury or African jury studies. They're experts in it now. And I reference them a lot because they provide a counterclaims. At the same time, within their own basis of argumentation, they provide facts that you can extract out and you can interpret because they give their interpretation of facts. And their interpretation is based on presumptive biases. And if you don't understand what their presumptive biases are, then you don't understand why they're interpreting the facts the way that they do. This is heavy. But if we apply it, we get further. We make progress. Let's keep going. Rebuttal. In this section, you incorporate your own evidence that disagrees with the counterclaim. It is essential to include a thorough warrant or bridge to strengthen your essay's argument. If you present data to your audience without explaining how it supports your thesis, always present data that grounds your thesis or your premise or your statement of opinion. You have to substantiate your assertions so they become thorough claims. It says your readers may not make a connection between the two, or they may draw different conclusions, which we don't want them to do. Okay. Now, here's an example of the town mean method. Claim hybrid cars are an effective strategy to fight pollution. Data 1, driving a private car is a typical citizen's most air polluting activity. That's a fact. Warrant 1, due to the fact that cars are the largest source of private as opposed to industrial air pollution, switching to hybrid cars should have an impact on fighting pollution. Data 2, each vehicle produced is going to stay on the ground for roughly 12 to 15 years. Warrant 2, cars generally have a long lifespan, meaning that the decision to switch to a hybrid car will make a long-term impact on pollution levels. Data 3, hybrid cars combine a gasoline engine with a battery-powered electric motor. Warrant 3, the combination of these technologies produces less pollution. Counterclaim. Instead of focusing on cars, which still encourages an inefficient culture of driving, even as it cuts down pollution, the nation should focus on building and encouraging the use of mass transit systems, which is a valid counterclaim. Let's keep going. Rebuttal. While mass transit is an idea that should be encouraged, it is not feasible in many rural and suburban areas or for people who must commute to work. Thus, hybrid cars are a better solution for much of the nation's population. And I will even say, another alternative would be what? Ride shares. That would be a counterclaim. Well, how do you work against ride shares? The inconvenience of a ride share, because if you want to make stops along your journey to work, you are confined to the consensus of the group in which you're committing your ride share duties to. You see, you understand the process. You can throw in counterclaims. You can rebut on the fly. This is what makes me extremely sharp in what I do. It's not because I'm some brilliant, intelligent being. Maybe some of y'all might think that. I appreciate that, right? But it's the methodology in which I utilize when I hear and discern things and when I approach things. This is why if we're going to have people that is going to represent our community, they must understand this, and they must be able to disseminate this with a demeanor that is not aggressive. Aggression is only necessary if you have to compensate for an insecurity. Let me say it again. Aggression is only necessary when you use it to compensate for an insecurity, okay? And this becomes the problem in the Black community. This is why, even though we may be making some great points, we're not using this approach. This is why it's not respected. And what happens is when our voice or our approach is not respected, we automatically say, oh, you see, that's why, because they're Gentiles and they're wicked and they're not going to understand. Wait a second. There's nowhere in here do you see that ad hominem helps to strengthen your argument. See, when Nick Cannon's situation, this is not his approach to the information. He's grabbing factoids from the conscious community, the Israelite community, and mashing them together, right? He's creating a conglomerate argument that is not coherent and not cohesive because he has not put it through a stringent research methodological approach to yield the end result. So that way he can address the counter arguments and counterclaims. This is what makes you efficient at being tactful and diplomatic, because you understand the protocol on how to dialogue with people that have opposing views. See, I'm dropping free game for y'all because the more we permeate our community with this, the more effective we could become when we get on that big stage and have to defend who we are. Not one time do I have to throw ad hominems out, use red herrings or any of that when you have a logical, reasonable approach. People say, well, that's not spiritual. It's not? Wait, so using your mind is not spiritual? Wait a second. Watch this. In ancient Israel time, what I want to share with y'all is the leb, or the heart, is the central place of man. When you go look up the word mind, what is the word mind in Hebrew? Anybody look up the word mind in Hebrew? Because sometimes the leb is the mind. Let me explain this. Torah teaches you how to use the logical and reasoning systems that was given to you so you can reflect the image of Yah, and utilizing that method to stay in harmony with your natural and social environment. Okay. All right. Some people may not like this. They may say, oh, Divine, man, you not getting into this. This is all spiritual, my brother. You just don't know how to wield this tool yet, and I'm trying to help you do it. Okay? So that's one method. Let's go through these methods real quick. The Rogerian method. The Rogerian method, named for but not developed by influential American psychotherapist Carl R. Rogers, right? That's why it's called the Rogerian method, is a popular method for controversial issues, which Israelite ideology and identity happens to be. This strategy seeks to find a common ground between parties by making the audience understand perspective that stretch beyond or even run counter to the writer's position. I love this approach. It's great. More so than other methods, it places an emphasis on reiterating an opponent's argument to his or her satisfaction. See, that's the passive aggressive. You allow their argument to hold the weight and use leading questions. Okay, let me stop. Let me just keep going. Let me just keep going. I'm just trying to fuse this into the community so we can take a better approach, a more level-headed approach in how we address these counterclaims and these opponents. None of it requires you to be reactionary. This is chess. I try not to play checkers with these people. I play chess. Okay, let's keep going. The persuasive power of the Rogerian method lies in its ability to what? Define the terms of the argument in such a way that your position seems like a reasonable compromise and you seem compassionate and empathetic. If you ever see me have debates on these channels with other brothers that are opponents or whatever, if you see how I handle them, sometimes I use this method a lot. They don't even realize it. But to the brothers that's out there that's been on this platform, here you go. I'm giving you free game. I'm showing you how to do this, son. That's how we do it. I'm giving you free game. Shout out to Love Hard, Fight Harder for donation. I appreciate that. My brother Get Wise, thank you for the donation. Pastor Johnson, Shabbat Shalom to you as well, Elder. Thank you for the donation. I appreciate that. All right. Thank you to everybody that's been listening. Again, family, hit that thumbs up button, hit that thumbs button, share this video, hit subscribe if you're brand new, because I'm trying to help my community. This may not be the most popular thing to discuss because y'all want to, discern doctrines and have debates and arguments and, speak out and talk down and tear down Babylon. Okay, I hear that. I'm just giving you one way to do that. You understand? I'm giving you one way to do that. Hopefully it gets respected so it's considered, because you'll see the effectiveness, because you know why? You have loved ones, family members, friends, associates that you care about, that you want to have this information. And sometimes you hit a wall and you don't understand. Sometimes it could be because of the familiarity. They're too familiar with you. That's why they're not receiving it, because they know the old you. And you're judged by the old you because the new you they can't understand. Make sure you recognize that. But then over time, if you distance yourself just enough from them and they see fruit being born from your actions, that preps them to say, hey, let me reconsider a discussion. And when that time comes, you don't beat them down. You can allow them to lead. Use the Rogerian method on them, and then you will make more ground. You will get more progress, and you will be more effective because these are people that you love. All right. Are y'all listening? Okay. The basic format of the Rogerian method is as follows. The introduction. Introduce to the audience, striving to remain as objective as possible. The opposing view. Explain the other side's position in an unbiased way, which I do all the time on this channel. When you discuss the counter argument without judgment, the opposing side can see how you do not directly dismiss perspectives which conflict with your stance. This is why, even though people shout me, oh, Divine, they say all this stuff to me, but I use this method. So if I'm already giving credence to your position and showing you the harmony between it and the balance in me presenting mine, how could you be upset or angry? You know what I'm saying? Sometimes it goes to show the religious zeal that people who claim not to be religious have. They're not being logical. They're being emotional. They're bitter. They're angry as well. Okay, let's keep going. Shout out to my brother Jordan's Cadet, she said, Shalawama flock of flame. He's crazy. I appreciate the donation. Thank you for that. All right. It says the opposing side can see how you do not directly dismiss perspective which conflict with your stance. Statement of validity, understanding. This section discusses how you acknowledge how the other side's points can be valid under certain circumstances. You identify how and why their perspective makes sense in a specific context, but still presents your own argument. Statement of your position. By this point, you have demonstrated that you understand the other side's viewpoint. In this section, you explain your own stance. So you see how you've given them the upper hand before you've even presented your argument. You see, that goes to show them that you're actually listening to them. Like you're having a discussion with the intent to understand them, and you're able to demonstrate. Like when I talk about the Trinity, I could talk about the Trinity objectively with no bias, no judgment, and then say, I disagree with it because of A, B, and C. I'm not saying, oh, y'all Babylonian worshipers, you see, you're worshiping 3 gods. I don't need to do all of that. That's not what I need to do in order for me to disagree with the Trinity. First, I demonstrate mechanical knowledge and understanding of the position of the worldview, of their vantage point. I demonstrate that and say, yes, I understand where you're coming from because it's A, B, and C. And then once I lay it out, I get them to validate the premise I just laid out that pertains to their position. And once they agree to it, now I hold them to that. And I say, okay, I see where you're coming from. And in certain contexts, I can see why you would get that position. But the issue or the disharmony or the imbalance with that level of thinking is not considering that there's weight of information on the other side that can be equally as valid. Just because it's seen through the wrong lens, that's why it's not received. So how can we strike that common ground? And this is where you build that discussion. See, if you want to unify with brothers and sisters that got opposing views, you have to take this approach. And it requires a lot of patience. You see, people say, oh, this is not spiritual. Yes, it is. This requires a great deal of patience, of understanding, of kindness, of empathy, right? Because before you go in, you have to be able to appreciate that that person has the integrity to convey unapologetically their position with the zeal that they're using. And what you do is the zeal is the energy, but you are the conductor. How are you conducting the energy that is so strong where if it's unbridled, it could cause damage? How do you control and conduct that electricity? So that way you can utilize it to power the things that you have, because electricity in its unbridled form is unwieldy. And when I see people that have opposing views, I see that. But you know what? I appreciate the element. So I speak about the components of the element that allows it to be useful to power things. But then once I allow that element in its unwieldy state to come through the conductive methods of being in a controlled state, then I show, look, we could take that same energy, and if we apply it here, we have more balance and we can power more things. We could do more with it. Okay. All right. Shout out to my brother Yelam Ben Israel for the donation. I greatly appreciate that. Listen, I know some of y'all wasn't here for this tonight, but this is going to help you. I guarantee if you utilize this and take some time, you want to get your spiritual game up, use these things here. This will try and test every ounce of character that you have in you. This is how you build character, through better argumentation, not yelling, being angry. You really want to control the reins of that unruly spirit, those lower portions of you that want to come out and just angry and use this. This is how you tame it. Okay, so let's keep going. Let's keep going. All right. You state your position. By this point, you've demonstrated that you understand your side, your other side's viewpoint. In this section, you explain your own stance, statement of context. Explore scenarios in which your position has merit. When you explain how your argument is most appropriate for a certain context, the reader can recognize that you acknowledge the multiple ways to view the complex issue. I always tell people this Israelite identity thing is a complex issue, and no one person understands every facet of it. So we work together to understand it, even with your opponents, because they bring things to the table that must be considered in order for you to strengthen your position. Statement of benefits. Watch this. You should conclude by explaining to the opposing side why they would benefit from accepting your position. By explaining the advantages of your argument, you close on a positive note without completely dismissing the other side's perspective. Y'all see me do that all the time. Where do you think I'm getting this from? I understand research methodology. And once I do my research methodology, I say, well, how then do I present this thesis to an opponent? Here you go. I'm giving you guys the science. All right. Let's keep going. Right. Here's an example. Introduction. The issue of whether children should wear school uniforms is subject to some debate. Opposing view. Some parents think that requiring children to wear uniforms is best. Why? Because it teaches discipline. It teaches uniformity. All right. This is me adding it. Right. Statement of validity. Understanding. Those parents who support uniforms argue that when all students wear the uniform, the students can develop what? A unified sense of school pride and inclusiveness. Okay. Statement of your position. Students should not be required to wear student uniforms. Mandatory uniforms would forbid choices that allow students to be creative, watch this, and express themselves through clothing. Statement of context. However, even if uniforms might hypothetically promote inclusivity, in most real-life contexts, administrators can use uniform policies to enforce conformity. Students should have the option to explore their identity through clothing without the fear of being ostracized. This is the same thing I say to Christians who call everything a heretic. You're a heretic. That's heresy. And you are pagan. And this is the stuff they say, right? They want uniformity within the Christian world. Anything that's outside of that, they want to ostracize. But what they don't want to tell you is that I bring up this argument. Watch this argument that I bring up. I said the same way that you try to use the Christian consensus in a Western society or country to justify why we should be Christians and the logic and reasoning behind you being presuppositional Christian. If you was a Christian in an Islamic country and you were being ostracized for your faith as a Christian, what do you want to do? Should you continue to be considered a heretic where some kind of bodily harm should come upon you? Or would you reason from a position and say, hey, wait, we should be able to consider all sides of the coin? I try to take a similar approach with them. Okay. Shout out to Sean105 for the donation. Thank you so much. Says, man, I needed this one tonight. No problem. I'm glad you enjoy it. All right. Statement of benefits. Though both sides seek to promote students' best interest, students should not be required to wear school uniforms. By giving students freedom over their choice, students can explore their self-identity by choosing how to present themselves to their peers. All right. Let me hurry up and get through this so I can do the Q&A and possible open panel. All right. Hopefully we didn't run down too much time, and I'm hopefully you guys enjoy this. Please hit 1 if this is helpful in any way, and I'll finish the classical method. Hit 1 and I'll finish the classical method. And again, I encourage you guys to go to this website, right? Write this stuff down, and in the arguments that you have, put it through this process and see if it strengthens your argument. All right. And this is stuff that I share all the time. A lot of times it just goes over people's head. People ignore it. They ask, well, how do you get to this conclusion, Divine? I like that. I said, well, here's game. I'm going to give you the tools. You can do it yourself. See where it takes you. You know what I'm saying? And then once you objectively get to your conclusion, share it with me because it's going to help me grow. That's how we work hand in hand. That's how iron sharpens iron. Now watch this. Let me get y'all to understand that, okay? When iron is in a rough state, it is very difficult for it to sharpen other iron. In order for it to sharpen iron, one has to handle the iron, put it through the fire as a blacksmith, and form it. So that way it has the angles that it needs with the acuteness of the strength in those angles in order for it to be able to diligently and effectively shape another piece of iron. Okay, let me not get too much into blacksmithing, but those of you who are blacksmiths, you understand. But what I'm simply saying is you cannot be in a rough form and then try to acutely sharpen somebody else. It doesn't work that way. This is why when we read about the spiritual things of the text, you know, mercy and kindness and discipline, those are all abstract elements. They don't mean nothing until you transmute them into real world actions. But it requires a great deal of subjugation to the benefits of putting the fleshly self or the lower part of yourself into subjugation to the spiritual element, which is the higher essence of self, so you can get to a state of self-actualization when you realize that my purpose is not to only serve me, it's for the benefit of the village. When you get to that state, the parts of you that want to rise up in opposition to the things that you do not like, they become subject to the greater weight of what is going on, the bigger matter. When you're able to self-actualize, you can be objective enough to apply these certain things. Therefore, you could become sharp enough so that way when you see another piece of iron that's rough, you can shape it, you can fashion it, you can form it. You got to spend time to be in the Creator's hand. It's not an easy thing. Not an easy thing. But when you spend time in his hand, he sharpens you. And he sharpens you to sharpen others. Okay. All right. Hopefully you're enjoying that. Thank you so much, my brother Roe the Chef, for the donation. I truly appreciate that, my brother. Thank you so much for your investment and the hard work that goes into presenting this to the community. Thank you to all the donors, right? Please hit that thumbs up button if you guys are enjoying it. I saw like 20-something people dropped off once I started getting into this. I don't know why, but this stuff is necessary. It makes you better. See, people don't want to be subjugated to the discipline and, that's necessary to be effective. They just want, oh yeah, I'm just yelling facts at you and throwing things. They just want that to be effective, and they get mad when nobody wants to listen to them. People say, yo, Divine, you should do this. You should yell. You should do this. I'm like, for what? Why would I act in a rough state and then try to sharpen somebody else? It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Okay, let's keep going. I'm glad y'all enjoying it, so let's keep going. The classical method of structuring an argument is another common way to organize your points, originally devised by Greek philosopher Aristotle. Now, y'all know that in regards to the Greek culture and stuff like that, I'm not the biggest fan. I understand it. I'm not the biggest fan. But when it comes to logic and reasoning, where do you think Aristotle got a lot of these things from? Who do you think he studied? The indigenous people. Okay, let's stop. He gets the credit, but the credit ain't because of him. It's because it comes from the other indigenous people of color outside of him that he studied. That let's say the majority of the Greek philosophers, they study indigenous people and how they operate. And then they took that knowledge and they formed it into a version that can, satisfy their audience. But they're not the originators of this. So when you see them say, oh yeah, it was devised by Greek philosophy, but who did he study first? Who did he study? Same way when you had the slave master that was trying to get rich off of using IP, copywriting IP, right? Patenting an IP in order to get an invention done. Then we go use their slaves and say, wow, damn, I was telling the slave to cultivate the ground. They made some kind of makeshift tool with some branches of sticks. How do they do that? They go over there and look at it, examine it, say, show me how you do that. Show me how to, yes, master. Master be like, oh, damn, that's good. Man, let me write that out. Write that down. They say, go file for the patent. That slave will never get the credit for it. And in the history books, it was that slave master that came up with that idea. Okay. All right. Let's keep going. Classical arguments tend to focus on issues of definition and the careful application of evidence. Thus, the underlying assumption of classical argumentation is that when all parties understand the issue perfectly, the correct course of action will be clear. Now, this is us dealing with these Jewish rabbis or what's called white Jews or whoever. Get them to understand the issue on both sides. A lot of times they're dismissive. A lot of times we're dismissive. Understand the issue on both sides. The basic format for the classical method is as follows. Introductions. Exordium. Introduce the issue and explain its significance. You should also establish your credibility and the topic's legitimacy. Statement of background. Narratio. Present vital contextual historical information to the audience to further their understanding of the issue. By doing so, you provide the reader with a working knowledge about the topic independent of your own stance. That's important, and we don't do that a lot. Proposition, propositio or propositio. After you provide the reader with contextual knowledge, you are ready to state your claims which relate to the information you provided previously. This section outlines your major points for the reader. Proof, confirmatio. You should explain your reasons and evidence to the reader. Be sure to thoroughly justify your reasons. In this section, if necessary, you can provide supplementary evidence and subpoints. Refutation, refutio, refutatio. In this section, you address anticipated counterarguments that disagree with your thesis. Though you acknowledge the other side's perspective, it is important to prove why your stance is more logical. So when they say, oh, you guys are not Israelites, whatever, I'm saying, no. That's illogical. No, what you mean that's illogical? You guys are, it's illogical, and here's why. It's only logical if there was no supporting evidence for it. Because there's supporting evidence, there is a logical reason to ascertain why we have this conclusion. Are you willing to understand the logic behind it? Yes or no? And if you say no, you don't, then it goes to show that you have a bias that is making you religious against evidence. How are you using a scientific method of ascertaining what is true and objective if you simply do not want to consider all the evidence? Not the interpretation of the data. Understand what the data is itself. Let me give you one example of this, and I'm going to finish this out. There are academics who argue against the authenticity of African Jewry because what they say is that the reason why these West Africans practice any form of Judaism today is either they were converted by Jews, which did happen, and you can't say that didn't happen. There were Africans that were converted to Judaism. That happened. That happened in Africa, and that happened over here in the Americas. It happened, okay? And I'm going to bring this out when I do my lecture because I got to showcase the opponent's worldview. And what I'm going to do when I do my presentation, I want one of you guys to tell me which one of these argument approaches that I took, and if you get it, you win a gift card. All right. Again, this is getting you guys to engage in this information, utilizing these tools so you guys can be better. I don't have to tell you how to think, right? I'm not going to tell you what to think. I'm going to give you the tools to teach you how to think, and then you go from there. But they say, oh, wow, these West Africans learn about Judaism through the Christian missionaries. And the Christian missionaries were trying to predispose them to be the chosen people so that way they can accept Christianity. So I'm like, okay, first of all, show me, watch this. This kills them all the time. Any of the primary sources, which would be the Christian missionaries themselves and things they wrote, show me anywhere in the preface, within the body, the footnotes, the conclusion, the addendum, where they said that we are trying to predispose these indigenous people to be Jews so they can receive the gospel. Show me where that's at. Show me where any of them said this. See, when you cannot find that, it is called somebody's relative interpretation of the data. Their relative interpretation of the data. Their relative interpretation of the data. That's why when I deal with academia, I start the inductive methods where I say, let's look at the facts. Once we look at the facts, then I say, well, how do you interpret this fact? And I see how they interpret it from their presumptive, approach to the or bias to the thing. And then I say, wait a second, within the data itself, if you're going to refer to primary source, which this is, show me where the primary source itself, outside of the simple facts that's there, where it agrees with that interpretation. Because if we have additional information that is added to the fact, let's read it. Let's see what it says. This is why I read the prefaces for all these Christian missionaries that make references to Black Jews in West and Central Africa. I read their prefaces, I read their footnotes, and I read their addendums or anything else they add to it before they give you their accounts of what it is that they are identifying and or the slaves that they spoke to. And I'm gonna get into this in 1 second. I'm gonna get into Christian Oldendorf with y'all and why he's important. But the bottom line I'm saying is they're using the data and they're interpreting it. But when you read the context of the data, that's not what they were trying to do. I give you an example. G.T. Baston lived amongst the Igbo for 20 years. He sacrificed 20 years of his life to sit with the Igbos. Again, y'all know that I don't support Christian missionaries, so I'm not automatically agreeing with their agenda. I'm not agreeing with the agenda. I'm extracting the facts within the narrative that they're laying out in their books. He lived with them for 20 years, and he said, his own words, he said, Joe, in the preface, the best way to understand this culture is to read the book of Leviticus. Understand the Levitical law, because almost everything that I've seen in the Levitical law lines up what they're saying. He didn't say, and because of that, they're Jews. He never said that. So where are these people coming up with this conclusion? Oh, because they have presumptive. I'm not even going to say it's assumptive. It's presumptive because they're coming in with a bias, a presumptive agenda to discredit the opposite claim. See, you can parse through all of that and separate that when you understand how to formulate your argument. This is what I'm trying to give y'all. It's free game. All right. All right. All right. So the refutation in this section, you address anticipated counter arguments that disagree with your thesis. Though you acknowledge the other side's perspective, it is more important to prove why your stance is more logical. And the conclusion, peroratio, you should summarize your main points. The conclusion also caters to the reader's emotions and values. The use of pathos, which is the empathy, here makes the reader more inclined to consider your argument. Example of the classical method. I'm gonna read this and then I'm gonna go back to the Q&A and open panel if y'all still want to rock. All right. And again, I know this is a lot of time talking on this, but it's necessary. I think this is the most important things you can take away from this ministry. This is how we're able to reconstruct and restore culture. This is how we're able to, work on unifying the community and becoming autonomous, because we take these approach and we apply them in real time. And I'm just giving you guys the same tools that I use. See, there's no hidden hand here. There's no need for me to do that, because I know if I give you the information and the tools to decipher that information, that it's going to lead you to the same conclusion that I came to. I have no fear in that. And if you come to a different conclusion, it goes to show that you have a creative process that's able to see it an additional vantage point to the information. And I want to learn that so I can grow. You see, it's all in how you approach the thing. Being reactionary, it only creates more walls. It only creates more roadblocks. It only creates more frustration for you. Don't be frustrated because you have opponents or enemies. Be grateful for them because they make you better. When you respond to them, be tactful, be proactive, be strategic. Because the moment that they can show that you are automatic reactionary to their actions, then they're ahead of the chessboard game, right? They put you on the offensive. On the defensive. We cannot keep playing defensive. We have to be able to play offensive, and we have enough tools in the shed to do it. It's just in how we wield it. If we have a gun and you're learning how to use a gun, there are several things you need to learn about using a gun. If I take somebody who's never used a gun before in a firing range, I have to first teach them stance. Then I got to see the gun that they can handle through kickback, right? Kickback is extremely important to see how much control you have over the gun. And your stance helps to control how you can wield the necessary power to prevent the kickback from affecting your accuracy. You see, we're trying to hit a target with the information. The problem is we have too many wild shooters like this. Wow, they're out there like how the dudes in the hood is just shooting like this. What I'm simply trying to say is, look, I see the same target as you. I have the same weapon as you, but let me show you how to use it. You want to turn the gun up this way. It's the reason why people don't shoot this way, orthodoxy. Turn the gun up this way, right? Hold your stance. Hold your appropriate stance, right? You got to get a grip or hand on it, right? Make sure that you can control the kickback, okay? Understand the caliber of the gun that you have. The bullets that you have in it. If you have hollow points, they're going to be much lighter than if you have, you got to understand these things. That's all I'm trying to do. Teach you how to fire that weapon. We see the target. You're going to get the credit, but wait, just slow it down. Just ease up a little bit. See, adjust your legs a little bit. Just handle. You want to do that? All right, it's cool. All right, you want to shoot, but remember, depending on the target, you may need a different gun. If it's much further away, you're going to use a handgun. Let me show you guys how to do this. I'm trying to show the community how to better formulate arguments so we can be more effective at bringing the truth. All right. All right. Let's keep going. Okay. Introduction. Exordium, right? Millions of workers are paid a set hourly wage nationwide. The federal minimum wage is standardized to protect workers from being paid too little. Research points to many viewpoints on how much to pay these workers. Some families cannot afford to support their households on the current wages provided for performing a minimum wage job. Statement of background, narratio. Currently, millions of American workers struggle to make ends meet on a minimum wage. This puts a strain on workers' personal and professional lives. Some work multiple jobs to provide for their families. Proposition. The current federal minimum wage should be increased to better accommodate millions of overworked Americans. By raising the minimum wage, workers can spend more time cultivating their livelihoods. Proof. According to the U.S. States Department of Labor, 80.4 million Americans work for an hourly wage, but nearly 1.3 million receive wages less than the federal minimum. The pay raise will alleviate the stress of these workers. Their lives will benefit from this raise because it affects multiple areas of their lives. Refutation. There is some evidence that raising the federal wage might increase the cost of living. However, other evidence contradicts this or suggests that the increase would not be great. Additionally, worries about a cost of living increase must be balanced with the benefits of providing necessary funds to millions of hardworking Americans. Conclusion. If the federal minimum wage was raised, many workers could alleviate some of their financial burdens. As a result, their emotional well-being would improve overall. Though some argue that the cost of living could increase, the benefits outweigh the potential drawbacks. Very simple, very clean, very cohesive, and delivered very well. That's it. Can you take this identity thing and this ideology thing and formulate it this way? Can you do that? If you can't, practice it. Everything is here. The template is there. Practice it. And the more you practice it, the more you can do. I have it in here. I remember this stuff off the dome. And I do it on the fly because I apply it so much, right? So when I'm talking to people, one of these three or many others, I just, let me grab that. And then, you know what I'm saying? Let me grab this. Over something new I haven't heard before, let's apply this research methodology. Let's take a look at it. What are the primary sources, the secondary sources, you know what I'm saying, the tertiary sources? Let's look at the, should I use the quantitative method? Should I use the qualitative method? How should I strain this out to filter it to get this and extract that? And am I using the CRAP method to validate the source? And it's these things that I do on the fly once I come across information. And my mind automatically processes it because it becomes second nature. You could do the same thing. That's why I don't mind being a diplomat for our community and conveying what our perspective is. See, if you go and watch that video that I showed y'all earlier, some of these things are in play as I'm speaking to them. You'll see I'm appealing to a lot of things, right? And even their own position, I've included it. You'll see on the fly how it works. That wasn't scripted. That was on the fly. And all I do is, so what's the difference between somebody that's smart and somebody that's intelligent? What's the difference? And after this, I'm gonna succeed this point, and we're gonna go and move forward. The difference between somebody that is smart and intelligent, I'm gonna show you how. Okay. Here's the difference. The difference is there is a particular task that needs to be done. Okay. There's an orthodox way to do it. And what I try to do with two individuals is I give them the tool and I say, okay, this is the task, solve the task, right? What the smart person will do is they will remember the appropriate approach to, traditional approach to resolving the task. And they'll remember it so much, it becomes second nature. They could do it at any time, right? And they're smart because they become accurate in doing it. The intelligent person understands that approach, but looks for more ways where they could be more sufficient paths to accomplishing that task. So they take an outside the box approach to resolve that task in a way where you save time, you save energy, and you save resources. This is why creativity is important. When I tell people the thing that I like to read the most, besides these academic articles and these books, you know what I like to read the most in order to learn? Are dissertations. Doctorate dissertations. The thesis papers that are written for people trying to get their doctorate degree. You know why? Because I realize the crux of innovation within academia are people that's writing these dissertations. Because a lot of these things are intelligent means of addressing traditional issues. And it's like, damn, that's a cool approach. So the point where I drafted my own particular theses and so forth for things, so you can be ahead of the curve. So you can introduce new things to the community and show people how to wield this information, how to be more effective at what they do. So our voice can go out there and it can be acknowledged. They don't have to agree with us, but they got to say, damn, they watertight with this thing. Okay. This is why think tanks are important and why we need more in our community. All right. All right. So with that, family, I just want to share that with y'all. Let's transition further than that. We are an hour and 45 minutes in. We can take another 30 minutes or so to do Q&A or to do panel. Shout out to EP in the building. We're glad you're here as well. Shout out to Chronicles of the Moon, Matayahu Ben Israel, Adonaya Haor. Let me see what else. Who else is here? Who else joined us? Malik Pride. Sheila Garland, thank you for joining us. Truly Chosen 619 said, what's the website again? Let me drop it in the chat. I'll drop the website in the chat. Here it goes right here. All right, that's the website right there. Shout out to 12 Pearls in the building. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. Let me see. Hanuk Yasharal. So now the panel is open. Q&A is open. Okay. Where is Michael Banks? Did y'all see him? What happened to that boy? I don't know what happened to him. Is he all right? I'm trying to understand what is it he was trying to get at. Not sure. Exactly, Vinny. Exactly. Right on. All right. Right on. All right. So Amun Rein Baneb Jezdet. Now, why are you asking me about the Saracens? What made you ask me? If you want to know information on who they are, look up Ali Muhammad's work. Okay? Look up Ali Muhammad's work. All right? Because he's done some work on those individuals. All right? So you can go check out his work. I don't need to do work behind somebody that's already done the work. Go ahead and watch his work. And he's brought up a lot of information in regards to who those individuals are. But I don't see how that question is in alignment with the things that we share, teach on this channel. You know, it seems like it's an innocent question, but it's not in alignment with the things that we actually teach or share on this channel. I'm trying to figure out why you're trying to get me off my square to address that. Is there a reason why you're asking me that? All right. Hanuk Yasharal, you can ask your question here. He sort of says, what was it about the chariots of iron that repelled the Most High? You gave me Judges chapter 1, verse 19. All right, so let's bring that up. Let's go take a look at it. Let's share this on the screen. All right. So I love Judges chapter 1 and chapter 2 for a host of reasons, but mainly because this is the Israelites in raw form before they settle the land. Okay. So now we read in Judges chapter 1, verse, let's go to 18. It says, Judah also took Gaza, Ashkelon, and Ekron. You know, these are three cities of the Pentapolis of the what we call the Philistines, or the sea peoples in which the Philistines come from, right? They had a Pentapolis, which is 5. Penta means 5. Polis means city. 5 cities, right? And these are 3 of them: Gaza, Ashkelon, and Ekron, right? So this is the coastal plain area, okay? So Judges 1 and 19 says, Yod-Heh-Wah-Pheh was with the men of Judah. They took possession of the hill country, but they were unable to drive the people from the plains because they had chariots fitted with iron, okay? So this doesn't mean that Yah was stopped. It meant that they were stopped. The tribe was stopped. Now, why would that be? Well, depending upon where you place the Exodus, right? Because my position is that the Israelites during this period of time, right? The Israelites was here during the late Bronze Age period, okay? So iron was not common at this time, okay? So when you have bronze and then you see people with iron, which is more technologically advanced than bronze in certain ways, they're going to have that advantage in warfare. See, let me show you guys a book. I think I showed you guys books on warfare before. Matter of fact, if you're part of the Patreon, you'll see books in regards to warfare. This right here, you have to understand warfare in the ancient Near East, and then you'll understand why these things are happening within the text. But if you don't understand the anthropological ramifications of warfare, then when it's reflected in the text, it's not going to make any sense to you. So this is not that they stopped the Most High, right? It has to do with technological warfare. Same way where I told people why the Hyksos that was in Egypt had more advanced weaponry and technology in regards to war, the composite bow, right? The improved horse and chariot, you know what I'm saying? The axe, you know what I'm saying? The composite axe that they had, you know what I'm saying? The short bronze swords that they wielded. They had technology because they were constantly fighting. See, at this point, the Israelites were not always in war. They had 40 years before they got to this point where they were in the wilderness and they had some skirmishes here and there. But the Most High says the reason why some of these Canaanites were left there was to teach the Israelites what? How to war, how to fight. Because when the kings come on the scene, they need to ensure that you have enough amount of time. You're talking about hundreds of years of being in this land fighting so that you improve your weaponry so that you can then drive out enemies. So you can then, stay off certain incursions and so forth. So this has to do with war. There's a book that I have scheduled to add onto the Patreon into my library. It deals with weaponry, right? So let me go ahead and show you guys this book so you can see it. All right. It's called The Military History of Ancient Israel, right? That's one of them. I'm going to show you another book. Let me show you this real quick. And this is why I encourage people to look at sources that complement the text. Sometimes you got to get extra biblical data to substantiate what you're reading in a text. Right. And this is not geared towards my brother here. He's towards my brother. But I'm saying to people who say, well, we don't need all of that. Yeah, you do. Because if you don't have it, you're going to give your own contemporary interpretation of what you're reading. You're not going to understand the entire historical and cultural context. All right. So let me show you this book real quick. Here's the book. OK. It's called The Military History of Ancient Israel. All right. By Richard A. Gabriel. Okay. It shows you the land of Israel, the armies of the Bible, the Exodus, the campaigns of Judges, and what? The War of the Judges. Page 153. All right. Go into the War of the Judges. You see, look, they even show you, they give you pictures of people. See, look at that. Israelite light infantryman, Davidic era, 1050 BCE. You got to understand who they were fighting against. 800 BCE. Let's go down further. All right, let's go down further in 150s. Let me show you. Campaigns of Joshua, which is also important. And then we get to Judges. Now, if you want this book, again, it'll be posted on the Patreon. www.patreon.com/DivineProspect. I have tons of sources like this on there that you guys can access at no cost. Okay? But let me show you. Hold on. Let's go down. This is the Wars of the Judges. Okay? You scroll down. And it's talking about them fighting against the Philistines and the Canaanites when they were trying to subdue the land. And you got major cities destroyed in the catastrophe. Says circa 1200 BCE. The Gibeah incident, it just goes into extreme detail on military campaigns, warfare, weaponry, and all of that. So what I want you to understand is the technological advantage that the Canaanites had because they were constantly warring. The Israelites, they were not warriors, right? When Yosef went into Mizraim and brought his family, these are 70 people. They were not warriors. These are people who are pastoralists. And then they multiply while they was in Mizraim. And then they were exiting out. They wasn't exiting out as warriors, but they understood that we need warriors in order to fight because we're going to face a lot of opposition getting up out of here. This is another reason why they spent 40 years there to learn the commandments, learn obedience, and to learn how to war. This is why the Canaanites were left in the land so they can learn how to war. Are you understanding me? Is this making sense? Is this helpful? If so, let me know. I have tons of books on warfare. Tons of books on warfare. All right? So, there's another book I have on warfare. Hold on. Let me pull it up. Right? Here's another one. Right? So you can understand what was going on. It's called Warfare in History, Warfare in the Ancient Near East to 600 BC, Holy Warriors at the Dawn of History, right? By William J. Hamlin, okay? And they go into detail, right? The Akkadian Empire, Neo-Sumerian Empire, war, carts, and chariots, Middle Bronze Mesopotamia warfare in the age of Mari, Mesopotamian siegecraft, Syria and Lebanon, Canaan. The reason why the Hyksos had more advanced weaponry than the Egyptians is because they were constantly fighting, so they were forced to improve their weapons, forced to use different metals and different strategies of metallurgy to make better weapons, to defend and offend. All right? So, my brother, if you're interested in those sources, email me. I'll get them to you, or sign up for our Patreon, and you can get access to all of those for free without having to ask. All right? All right. So, hopefully that helps with that. Okay? All right. So Chris Bronson says, Divine, what's the Book of War and the Book of Numbers? Nobody knows definitively because that book has not survived through the centuries. So all we could do is speculate. All right. So there's speculation on there that all of the battles in which took place of Israel was codified into one book. And it was just talking about campaigns, warfare, weaponry, etc. Like the stuff I'm showing you, just in a narrative that speaks just on that. That's the Book of Wars. All right. So we don't have that. So all we could do is speculate. All right. Sean 105 says, can you touch on Paul and Gentiles? Sure. What would you like me to discuss on that? Because I've talked about that ad infinitum on this channel. You know what I'm saying? But if you have a specific question, let me know and I'll go ahead and I'll disseminate that. All right. Joe Nuff says Nick didn't lose a discussion and actually have a powerful position to move forward. The pressure now needs to be applied to Howard University and alumni. Well, I would say Nick did have some good information, but some information he had was not good information. And it's all in how you present the information. You have to have, it has to be coherent and cohesive. And his information was not fully coherent, it's not fully cohesive, and it did not have any kind of objective academic conveyance. And if he had that, then it doesn't matter who you speak to, you can get your point across, whether they agree or not. All right. Chris, I just said what my speculation was on. It was just a book of different battles that they had. All the battles that they had, you know, they had record keepers that kept record of various battles and details and so forth. We have some battles recorded in the text, but we don't have every battle recorded in the text. But the Book of Wars has a majority of those battles in the text that's not written in the narrative. Narrative has a particular agenda, and that's not to showcase every war and every battle. But the Book of Wars did have that information in it. All right. All right. So Adanya Haor says, what are the possibilities Israel amalgamating with the Carthaginians who moved into North Africa and perhaps subsequently migrated into West Africa? So that is the trans-Saharan route, right? You have the sub-Saharan route and the trans-Saharan route. So the trans-Saharan route, you did intermingle with some people from Carthage, North Africa, some Berbers, etc., right? And some Moors, all right? There was intermingling with all those groups, and they took sub-Saharan routes from the north into West Africa. Now, what I teach is that the 70 AD incident and all of that stuff, these were Judeans that fled into Africa, stayed in Egypt, and a lot of them migrated the trans-Saharan route through North Africa. The sub-Saharan route, was pre-exile Judeans and pre-exile northern Israelites that made their way into West Africa by way of Egypt, Sudan, Chad, and took the Sahel region route into West Africa, West and Central Africa. All right. And even went their way a little further south towards what we would say is Ethiopia, and then migrated from there over to the West. All right. So hopefully that begins. So TORIO hashtag the Most High says, do you believe in the Book of Enoch? I don't know if it's a matter of believing in it, but there is data in it that I subscribe to. And I put this out all the time. There's information in it that I see is much later that I don't subscribe to, but there's some stuff that's in it that is earlier or that can be antiquated, and I support that. If you want to know what that information is, I did a lecture where I touch on how I address that. One of the lectures I did was a lecture I did on the calendar, in which I dealt with the astrological or the cosmological essence of the calendrical system that is housed in the Book of Enoch. And I showed you the methodology that I utilized to extract what is old and what is more recent. And one of the examples I use of that is the phase of the moon that was initially reckoned was that of the full moon. And then over time, it transitioned to the dark moon being the new moon. And I explained that in there and use that same methodology, and you can apply it to the entire book of Enoch to extract which is antiquated, which I would say is more true to what was held by groups of Israelites, as opposed to what was written much later for propaganda while the Israelites was going against the Greco-Roman army. And the reason why you see the emphasis on a calendrical system in the book of Enoch is because it was one of the ways in which it was fighting against Hellenism and the Grecian method of reckoning time. All right. So, Sean, in regards to that, Paul's audience were mostly Gentiles who were not ethnically Israelites. But at some places, you know, he makes a reference in saying our ancestors. So in some places, there were Israelites amongst them, right? But they were not the majority because he was given the right hand of fellowship to go to the Gentiles, according to Galatians chapter 2. All right. Jonah, I'm not sure what you mean by that. You said for the next classes. What do you mean by that? Tell me about that. John Williams, he said Timbuktu. Timbuktu was along the Trans-Saharan route. Trans-Saharan route was Timbuktu. Okay. But what I say is that the Israelites, pre-exile Judeans and Northern Tribe Israelites that ended up in West Africa, that route, the sub-Saharan route through the Sahel region, is more antiquated than the Trans-Saharan route. That's my position. All right. And I did a lecture in 2018 where I talked about this, right? It's called the Israelite Time Council Left in West Africa. And then the presentation I'm going to do that's coming up in August, the earliest, and September the latest, I'm going to speak further on that information. Okay. I agree, Jonah. I hear what you're saying. I agree. All right. Jordan's Cadet says, what do you think about dark matter? My position on dark matter is purely scientific and has nothing to do with the Bible per se. All right. Now, if you want to know some of my position on that, Hugh Ross, Hughross. He's a great source that explicates my position when it comes to cosmogony and astronomy as it relates to the scriptures. All right. Or the website that's called GodandScience.org. All right. And you'll see what my position is on dark matter as it relates to the scriptures, right? Israelite culture and separate. Matter of fact, I have books that deals with cosmology and the cosmogony, Genesis. And in some of these books, it mentions dark matter because they're more recent. So if you're interested in those books, Jordan's Cadet, I can send those to you. I could just throw them up on the Patreon because I know you're part of the Patreon. All right. So Hanuk Yashra says, did you see my question? What is your question? Type it again. There's so many things coming through here. I'm not seeing everything. What is your question? Chronicles of the Moon says, was the Ark of the Covenant a war weapon? No, it wasn't a war weapon. It was a relic or an object that was adorned and that was utilized as part of worship for the Israelites. So it was more so the embodiment of the essence of the Most High, because the only time it was used, it wasn't even used as a weapon, but the only time it was weaponized is when it was in the wrong hands, right? Because even the Israelite that touched it the wrong way, who was not a Levite or whatever, they would die. Just like David's friend died because he touched the ark the wrong way, right? Philistines had that joint. People were dying, plagues and all. They had to get rid of it. That was something that was common in the ancient Near East. Whenever you had a relic that the deity was believed to reside in or on, or whatever the case may be, it was extremely sacrilegious for you to mishandle it. Okay? Extremely sacrilegious because there were consequences to mishandling it. So no, it was not used as a weapon of warfare, but it became a weapon when it was mishandled because it was thought to have possessed the deity's essence on the mercy seat of the covenant. The essence of the Most High resided on the mercy seat. So when Moses went into the tabernacle, that's how he convened with Yah. right? And remember, Moses was a Levite. That's why he was able to go into the holiest of holies and speak to the essence that was residing on the ark. All right. Facts, Jordan. Facts. Some say, so what are you saying? Some say we are not to fast on the Day of Atonement. Nehemiah 8 doesn't even mention the Day of Atonement. Then the next chapter says they gather for. So you're asking about fasting for Yom Kippur. So fasting for Yom Kippur is however you afflict your soul. That phrase is really generic. Some people have linked it to fasting, you know, refraining from food. Some people say it's anything that the nefesh or the soul desires, anything that you like that's a desire, you refrain from that. I would say it would be in the hands of halakha. However, the community can come together, or your organization, your congregation decides how we're going to apply this today. Because remember, there's no high priest that's there right now in the temple that's atoning for the sins of everybody. Some people who believe in the New Testament, the Brit Hadashah, say that's Yeshua. You know what I'm saying? Some believe that he's even doing that atonement every Yom Kippur as a representation of a high priest. Some people say they don't have to do any of that because Yeshua is there. But there's some people that say, okay, as a group collectively, let's rehearse these acts so it can become part of our cultural edicts or mandates, or part of our cultural way of applying the culture or Torah, so that way when the time comes in the end, we're going to be fully in alignment with doing it. So it's a way to please Yah, and it's a way for you to know the etiquette that's necessary to apply it when the necessary situation occurs. All right. Sahel is, yes. So the Sahel region can be considered trans-Saharan as well. Correct. It also incorporates some of the countries that have deserts in them, but mostly that Sahel region would be your sub-Saharan route. All right. Facts, Sky Village faction. I agree. All right. So raise the Matrix 7. I could go into that. I actually spoke about that in a lecture. The lecture I spoke about that is called How Do We Walk It Out? All right. How can we walk it out? All right. Look that lecture up. If not, somebody in the chat, please share it, the link for him so you can take a look at it. But in there, I do express my approach in regards to those letters. And that also will be in my upcoming presentation that I'm going to be doing with the brother Shema. Okay. All right. So I think I answered enough questions. We went into enough information tonight. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the show. We made it at 2 hours. I'm going to cut this one short. He says, and what about the 4 facets? So Hanuk, email me. So adrenochrome and its anti-aging properties. Jordan Cadet, you get into a heavily scientific conversation, my brother. And that's why I love the way you think, man. Email me, my brother. Let's take that offline. All right. Email me, take that offline. All right. So I'm gonna answer this one last question from Jack Max, and we're gonna be done. All right. And we're doing good on time. But let me answer that. All right. Jack Max says, what are some of the major differences you've seen between a pre-exilic Israelite and Second Temple Jew? Would you see those differences in an African Hebrew and Rabbinic Jew today? Yes. Now, that is a layered and complex question, but there are ways that you can simplify it, right? My position is that we need to adopt the pre-exilic Israelite culture because it makes us distinct from anybody else that says that they're Jews, because it's in alignment with the experience that we've had in regards to our trek from Israel over here to America. All right. And it incorporates our West African heritage and history. All right. You cannot get away with that. All right. So a major difference would be the minhagim that we apply, the customs that we apply, because it's also minhagim that's involved in Second Temple Judaism that's practiced by Orthodox Jews who are Sephardim and Mizrahi and, you know, Ashkenazim and Yemenite and etc. We cannot take what they're doing, blackwash it, and say it's ours. No, we have our own, but we have yet to discover it. And because we don't know the research methodology to utilize to reconstruct and restore it, we take bits of theirs, we blackwash it, and we say it's ours, and we had it first, and they stole it. No. You took it from them, and you call it your own. That's not how you do it. So some of those minhagim that I explained, several of them. One is the casting lots, which is a form of divination, right? Pouring libations, right? Which is something that they no longer do. And your halakha. How do you apply the implicit elements of Torah? This is all going to make you unique in your application of applying your identity in the land in which you're in, so that is an ethnic marker to who you are. What I've proposed is that a lot of the African Americans, Israelite heritage is in West Africa. You have to examine West Africa because a lot of them who are Israelites today, the Hebrewists, not the ones that are adopting Second Temple Judaism, because that is a construct that is not authentic. That is something that was adopted. That's not authentic. But the Hebrewists, they're the ones who have retained the pre-Israelite Israelite culture within their practices of Omenana and Odinani. And I've put this out before. This is why when you watch that lecture, How Do We Walk It Out, you understand that. But that is an excellent question. Excellent question. And Sean, you know the answer to that, but I guess you want me to answer it for the people. But all you got to do is watch that lecture. And that lecture, I kind of break that out. I explained that. I said, look, you know, the halakha that they use, that they derive from the Talmud, we don't need that. We can reconstruct our own. That makes us distinct. And I explained to you when the Sephardim met the Ashkenazim, the Sephardim thought the Ashkenazim were wild in their applications of Torah or whatever. And then, okay, I went into that. It's deep. But that's an excellent question, Sean. And I can get further deeper into that. But I would encourage the people to please watch How Can We Walk It Out first. Once you guys watch that, then when we revisit that question, we can address. All right. So TRRIO says that's Igbo mythology. Odinani. Now you said that's Igbo mythology. No, the mythos is included within the cultural framework and understanding who you are in relation to your natural environment in other groups, right? So because the Igbo can be identified as having some forms of Semitic infusion, and some of those being Israelite, it's contained within their native culture, Israelite stuff. If you don't believe me, you can look in the works of Remy Ilona, who's written several books on this, right? And you can even see and get access to some of this on the Patreon, where he, being an Igbo, who went to college to be a lawyer, but wind up delving in religious studies. He's one of the people that helped to strengthen a lot of things that I already knew, but I couldn't really put my finger on it, and actually understanding what it is that I'm saying to you. And another thing that I want to get into, you guys, is talking about Christian Oldendorf. Now, let me show you something that's extremely important. This is one of tons of sources I have. But this is a great source, and I'm going to end off on this. And I'm glad that he asked it. I'm end off on this, right? Sean, exactly. We weren't Jews. We weren't Jews. We were not Jews. We fight so much to be black Jews, but that's not who we were. We were not black Jews. How are you a black Jew? That just means Orthodox Judaism, throw black faces on it. That's all that means. Don't fight to be an Orthodox Jew or a black Jew. Fight to establish your Israelite identity and heritage. Israelite identity and heritage. Not being the black Jew. A descriptive noun. No. Watch this. So TRRIO says he's Igbo. Excellent. If you Igbo, that's all you're able to spot out. Omenana and Odinani. You're able to identify what it is that I'm talking about. And then Torio, go back and watch How Do We Walk It Out. Because if you are Igbo, please watch that. Please watch that, my brother. Please. Because I think if you haven't already seen it, you will enjoy that. And sometimes, which is really interesting, is that I have a lot of Igbo associates who are Christians, and they don't even know a lot of information about the indigenous culture. And I use that element to teach them that, look, you have Israelite identity in there. Does that mean that every single Igbo has Semitic infusion? No, but this is why we go and look at the Enri tribe, and we go into the Aruchukus, who were the ones responsible for the raids and controlling the slave trade during the late 1800s and so forth. When we study these things, we understand where they say they come from through their oral tradition, parse that out, look at the customs, line it up with a profile of ancient priesthood Israelite customs, and be able to compare, do your comparative analysis and break everything down, show the affinities, and be able to reconstruct from there our own halakha. Because it's left there. We had the isms of it coming over here to the Americas. We had Africanisms, and within those Africanisms is some Israelisms in those Africanisms, and you can parse them out. It's really, really interesting. But let me bring up my last point, and I'm gonna end off. This is some great stuff for you guys to understand, because there are tribes in West Africa that have the preservation of ancient priesthood Israelite culture embedded in them because of Semitic infusion. I'm going to give you a great example right now, what I'm talking about. And this is why people who are opponents of the Israelite worldview, there's in no way am I degrading West African culture, history, and heritage. I understand it, I appreciate it, and I identify with some of it, of course. But what I'm simply saying is that I have chosen because West Africa is a composite of various groups. It is not one, homogeneous group. It's a heterogeneous group, okay? Where we've only tested DNA from those who have supplied DNA, but we also have found peripheral DNA within indigenous people who are there in West Africa. See, they don't like to talk about that. They only like to talk about the consensus of the DNA. They don't like to talk about the variations outside of the consensus of people who can be identified as being indigenous to that region, going back hundreds of years, thousands of years in that region. That's something for a totally different conversation. But I want you guys to see in regards to the approach. So, using primary sources, I want you guys to understand who Christian Oldendorp is. All right. So let me bring up some information on him. I want to show you this, right? He says Ghana, Benin, Nigeria, Congo, Loango, the kingdom of Loango and the Vili peoples. Extremely important. The Vili peoples were the ones that controlled the slave trade along the Loango coast. It was very difficult for the Europeans to cut into there initially, but then the Vili people started to work with them. They were highly skilled tradesmen and they were highly advanced. The Congo kingdom was extremely advanced. Europeans went in there and said, damn, this looks, whoa. And the first thing they wanted to do, because these people were so intelligent and how they ran a society, was convert them to Christianity. But then you had these new Christians, quote unquote, and then you had these Portuguese Jews that were converting to Christianity that then tried to come into that region and take over and so forth. There's a really rich history that you need to understand. See, this Israelite element in West and Central Africa is extremely complex and layered. There are forms of conversion in there. There are forms of Sephardim, or what they call Black Jews from the Iberian Peninsula, that was excommunicated, that went to Sao Tome and those islands off the coast of Senegambia, and then the ones that came along the coast of West Africa. You got to understand who those individuals are. People say, well, they're all the same groups and the same people. They're the Lusa. I'm like, no, they're not. How do you tell the difference between them? Looking at the Minhagim. Whatever data we have of the Minhagim will tell you that these people are not converts. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. If there are biblical practices or customs in the Bible that the Igbo are already doing, I'll give you an example. The Brit Milah, right? The Brit Milah, which composes your naming ceremony, right? It composes the mother's separation period, right? Of cleansing herself, right? And the circumcision. If you go into Igbo culture, they circumcise on the 8th day. They have a separation period for the mother from away from the child. And also they have a naming ceremony. Okay. A lot of times the name in Igbo culture will have Chukwu in it, which is the chief patron immaterial deity that reveals himself through the Alusi, right? Or in other means of revealing himself, right? Or like he said, the Chi, which is the spirit that's in you, or the Ruach that connects to the chief deity Chukwu. Okay, but when they do the naming ceremonies, a lot of times they'll have the name Chukwu in it, and if they do, it's a theophoric name. That same similar ceremony is similar in ancient pre-Israelite culture. I brought up academic articles that go into the naming schemes or the onomastics in regards to how Israelites were named and when these ceremonies took place, and the shrines, woo, deep shrines that were crafted up in ancient Iron Age Israel to the deity, Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, and those shrines and the names on those deities were responsible for applying an attribute of the deity that they then will impose upon the child, so the child's destiny will be laid out before they're even able to walk on this earth. All right? So when we look at that and we see how that ceremony is done, the naming portion, the separation of the mother, there's even a celebration when the child is here, right? And the circumcision. There's ways that Igbo already do that. The way the Igbo do it represents the ancient Israelite practice that was untouched and undisturbed by Second Temple Judaism and Orthodox Judaism and Hasidic Judaism and Ashkenazim, etc. It's untouched. But they also have a similar ceremony because the Minhagim that developed from out of their Second Temple Judaistic practices has formulated their way of applying it in their community. But the Igbo already have some, and African Americans in America have a great percentage of Igbo heritage. So if we're going to go back and reconstruct and restore ancient Israelite pre-Israelic practices, we have to see those who still have it retained in a time capsule that when you crack it open, you can get these elements to learn how to reconstruct how it was before there, because they were already planted there before conversion. You cannot get it from Igbo that convert to Second Temple Judaism, and their customs of Minhagim resemble those of Ashkenazim and Sephardic practices. No. You go to the Hebrewists, who have an oral tradition that they came from Israel, but they simply keep Odin, Nadi, and Omenada and said our ancient pre-Israelite culture is contained within this. And the difference is Ani, which is the land in Igbo tongue, is the way that we practice it here. Our major crash crop or our harvest is yams. We don't have yams there in Israel. So the same principle that we applied there, we applied here in the land, in Ani, in this land. But this is the arguments that I use, the ISSJ, that get them to reconsider how they identify who is a Jew or an Israelite or not. Okay, so let's keep going. Let's keep going, right? Let's get into this guy. I want to show you this source real quick. Let me show you this source. I'm gonna give you because there's contemporary secondary sources of people who lived around the same time that he lived, but he's a primary source. This guy was German, who's recruited by the Moravian, Dutch Moravian Brotherhood, that was sent to the Virgin Islands, where he spoke to slaves. Because if you don't know the history, my family, my mother's side, is from the Virgin Islands. Okay, the Dutch controlled the Virgin Islands for a long time before other groups started taking over the Virgin Islands, right? But in that region, there were slaves that were there. So this guy, Christian, Oldendorf, he has a very long name, but I'm gonna call him Christian Oldendorf. He went to this region to look into how the Moravian Brotherhood was. This is why if you see anybody that's a Christian, Moravian Christian from the West Indies, right? This is where it came from, the Dutch. But anyway, so he went to go and look to see how things were going in that region to report it back, right? And he was interviewing the slaves. And you know what he found out through his interviewing of the slaves and information? That in the kingdom of Loango, which was one of the major trading posts for slaves in Central West Africa, that there was a colony of Jews that lived there that strove to keep themselves distinct and separate from the other peoples that were there, but they looked just like the other people that were there. This has nothing to do with these Lusas or these Portuguese new Christians who are Jews converted to Christianity coming over there. They were not the same peoples, because those people went to Angola, and then from Angola they went into the interior to Congo to convert those people there. This had nothing to do with Loango. But what happens is the presumption comes in by academia to dismiss those colony of Jews who were indigenously already there, lived there for a long period of time, to call them Portuguese Jews, to dismiss the validity and authenticity of their culture that they had there before we had any of these colonists there. And they were told, he was told this by the natives who were Africans in the diaspora that were working in West Indies or in the Virgin Islands that gave him this firsthand information. And then you'll see other people who quote him. I go right to the primary source, so much so I got it written in German because he was German. His book was written in German. And what happened was his book was so lengthy, they was unable to publish the entire book. So they have published 1/3 of his book. He has so much additional information. I read this stuff all the time because when opponents come up and they start talking this stuff, I got to get into specifics with them to see if they actually read the content that they are disagreeing with or trying to interpret. All right. But watch this. When we're going to say Israelites, this is why I tell you, you have to have primary references from either native peoples themselves or colonists or missionaries, whoever, who have identified, found, or discovered Black Jews in certain regions. So if you go and do your DNA test and your DNA test goes back to the Congo, which you'll see because a lot of the Congolese and people from the Loango coast, they were brought to Cuba. They were brought to Brazil, and some of them was brought to, the islands in North America. But a lot of them also flowed through Louisiana, which then made their way over to the southern states. And some of them came through Savannah and Charleston, right? Which were ports which these cargo slave ships were docking and bringing slaves in as well. And you got to understand where slaves come from. So if I have major Congolese in my blood from my DNA test, it goes to show I can go and look from that and say, okay, I know what period of time my ancestors came over here, and I know during the period of time in which we're able to break down my haplogroup, who brought us over here, who were we under, depending upon the period of time, and when my heritage goes back. What island did I go back to? What part of the U.S. did I go back to? Does my heritage go back to Louisiana? Does it go back to South Carolina, Georgia? Does it go back to the Virgin Islands? Does it go to Brazil? You get to see these things, but then there's also I forgot the word that they use. This is a term they use, but there was a trade after Africans were brought over here. There was trade amongst South America, the islands, Central America, and North America. They traded amongst themselves. So a lot of times you didn't get in a linear path from West Africa over here to one destination. Trade, slaves were traded all the time. Louisiana was a heavy trade port where slaves were traded to the Americas, the colonies, and so forth over a period of time before that area was taken. The point I'm trying to make is, if you're going to say that you're an Israelite and you do your DNA and it says you have a major portion of Congolese in you, and you can trace that back to the Loango coast, well, guess what? There were colony Jews there, and guess what happened to those Jews? They disappeared after the transatlantic slave trade. They were gone, vanished. And the Vili peoples were the ones responsible for the raids and the capture of potential slaves that they then were trading with the Europeans. And guess what their custom was? To find the base peoples amongst them first to trade. And guess what? They did not like those colony of Black Jews. So listen, you can call this speculative or whatever you want. Let's check out the primary sources. Go back and look up Christian Oldendorf yourself, but I'm going to show you one of the primary sources. And when I do my presentation, this is the type of stuff that I'm going to unpack. It's heavy. Watch this. Watch this. Let me bring up the source for you real quick. All right. So you don't think that I'm just making stuff up, and it's deep. Let me show you the stuff. All right. Here's the primary. All right. So his book, that was German, which you see here on the right, right? It was translated into English, okay? And called A Caribbean Mission. The reference to Black Jews is on pages 167 and 168. Here's 167, 168. Within this context, this is what he talks about, right? This is the primary source, okay? I have it in both English and I have it in the original language it was written, right? But let's get some information about this from a secondary source. Again, this is how you do research, right? Before I can vet the secondary source, because look at this. A lot of people utilize secondary sources that was contemporary to Christian Oldendorf that references his primary work, But Israelites that are using this, they're using secondary sources that are quoting from a primary work. I get the primary work, and then I utilize the secondary sources to work hand in hand. Let me show you an explanation of this, right? Let me show you this, right? Two things I'm going to show you guys, right? I'm going to show you two secondary sources. I'm going to show you a contemporary secondary source, and I'm going to show you a modern secondary source of an expert of African Jewry, right? Here's the first one. Let me bring this up, and I showed this on this channel before, but let me get a little deeper into it, okay? Let me break it up for you, and I'm going home with this. I'm getting off the air with this, all right? So check this out. This is when, and this is the stuff you use when people say, oh, there's no such thing as black Jews in West Africa and they were all converts. No, they was not. This is why I say it's a complex issue. And when they try to do what's called a hasty generalization and use blanket terms to say this incorporates every individual that's there, that's not true. Have you examined all of the customs of these people, their halakha? Have you looked at this? This is how you know who's who. So watch this. Watch this. Let me show you this. This is why I tell Israelites, don't be afraid of DNA. DNA you shouldn't be afraid of, because most of the places where African Americans have ancestry from tribes in West Africa, your ancestors were picked up and they were brought over here. They were taken and brought over here. And there was a particular methodology that was utilized by certain West African peoples on how they captured. I'll give you an example. And we look at the Aruchukwu, which was the group that was responsible for manipulating the slave trade in Igbo land. They were using the Ikpakbu, which is like, hope I'm saying that right. I just got it. But I think that's what, if I'm saying it right. But they use what's called a divination device. And the purpose of the divination device was these Aruchukwu people were tradesmen, right? And they had business dealings with certain groups of people which they felt they were wronged in some way. So what they did was they used this divination element to get the peoples to, inquire of the divinity on certain outcomes for things. And they used it in a way where they manipulate the divination. So that way the people were getting a response that was saying that because of something that you've done, whether it's a bad business deal or whatever, you are now subject to servitude. And they would take those people and they will bring those people to the coast, and those people will be taken into slavery. You started first with base people. Anybody within the community that was ostracized, anybody in the community that was criminals, anybody in the community that were foreigners. You start pulling from those groups first. And then as the slave trade is increasing and demand is getting higher, then you got to find other ingenious ways to take from amongst your own people. Now, did they know that the type of slavery that they were going to face in West Africa was going to be as treacherous and as, just horrendous as it was? They didn't know that, right? But nevertheless, I'm just telling you how they sourced the people. If there's a black colony of Jews that were there in the kingdom of Loango and the Vili peoples who were distinct from them, and maybe has some acculturation, and culturation happen over time through cultural diffusion, which tends to always happen. But in this case, I would say from the Congo region, looking at Loango, they will go first to those foreign people and take them and bring them into slavery first before they do their own people. And then over time, because of high demand, they do. I have tons of books on this, tons of sources on this. You have to spend. So I told Israelites, you have to study the transatlantic slave. It's extremely complex. In order for you to say you're an Israelite, you have to have these type of cues or clues where you can base your argument off of. Remember, I showed you the three major arguments and the ways you can do it. This is one of the primary sources that you can utilize. But watch this. Let me give you a contemporary source and let me give you a modern source, right? Here's a contemporary source that Israelites use all the time, but a lot of them don't even have the primary source because it's written in German, but there is a English translation. It's called the Caribbean Mission, which I just showed you. Check it out. Right here. This is a tribute for the Negro by Wilson Armistead. Right. And it goes here on page 65. It says a remarkable fact in the history of Loango and the Empire of Congo is that the country, according to a statement which was fully credited by Oldendorff, himself a writer of most correct judgment of unimpeccable veracity, that's a biasness, right? Because he likes Oldendorp. But here's the fact: contains many Jews settled in it who retain their religious rights and the distinct habits which keep them isolated from other nations. Though thus separate from the African population, they are black and resemble the other Negroes in every aspect as to physical character. Then he goes on to say it is probably an allusion to the case that Pennington in his textbook says the descendants of a colony of Jews originally from Judea settled on the coast of Africa are black. Now, let's go to that primary. Again, this is not even the lecture. I'm just giving you some stuff that's in the lecture. Let's go to Pennington's primary source. Let's bring that up. Pennington, this source is called A Textbook of the Origin and History of the Colored People, right? By James W.C. Pennington. On page 96, he says the Portuguese who planted themselves on the coast of Africa a few centuries ago have been succeeded by descendants blacker than the Africans, and a stronger case still is to be found in the fact that the descendants of a colony of Jews originally from Judea, not converts, originally from Judea, to the coast of Africa are black. He's not saying these are Jews that came from Portugal. These are not the Lusa. These are not, he's saying from the record that they're getting from their travels and then from talking to indigenous peoples in that region, this is 1841, they're saying that, yo, these Jews, that colony of Jews are there, they came from Judea. They came from Israel. That's where these Jews came from, and they're black. All right. Let me go to the last reference, man. Let me get the last reference. All right. This is how you're surgical with this information. You understand what I'm saying? I don't have to badger and point fingers and ad hominem in another group. I just simply give the facts on us. That's it. You have to be surgical with this because there's so many opponents against our identification as being Israelites. And what I'm going to do is show you the books on how the Arochukwu sourced who they picked and put into slavery, the Vili peoples who they picked and put into slavery. When you go to Wida was one of a major trading posts in Benin. You got to study that. Loango Coast was a major trading post in regards to the Bight of Biafra, where we get where the Igbo land is at, was also a major trading post. You have to learn what the Gold Coast is, the Ivory Coast. The Ivory Coast is where you get the Congolese area. When they came there first, you got to look to see the frequency of slaves that were sourced from these various regions. Who were the ethnic groups within these regions that were involved in the slave trade, how they sourced their trades, and is there any record of Black or African Jews in these regions before conversion? We have that information. We can do work on this. So let me go to the last point. I'm getting off here. I don't want this to be too long. Hopefully this helps somebody. Let's get into the last point. I'm going to show you from a contemporary academic author who was part of ISSAJ, who does not support that modern Judaizing groups in West Africa are authentic. However, he acknowledges this history. Yo, you can't get around these facts. Let me bring this up real quick. Let's get into Oldendorp. All right, hold on. Watch this. Let me show you this. Now you got to remember, he adds his biases to this as well. All right, but let me bring up his source of Oldendorp. Where is it at? All right. I'm going to read this to you. Again, this is going to be part of my presentation, but I'm going to read it to you, right? Let me bring it up. Hold on. Let me bring it up. All right. Where is it at? Okay, here it is. I got it. All right, watch this. Let me bring it up. You don't play with this, man. This is not a game. Let's bring it up. All right, let's do it right here. Watch this. Let's read this. Let me give you the source after I'm done. You ready? I'm going to read the highlighted. It might be a little small. Let me see if I can zoom in. Can I zoom in? There we go. All right. There are then numerous references. This is what he's saying now. There are then numerous references after the 17th century to Black Jews in various places in West Africa. One of these communities, listen to what he's saying, while being little known or not at all known today, even by specialists in the field of African Judaic studies, which he's one of these specialists, was to exercise a profound fascination on Western thinking and travels for 100 years. This strangely unremarked group was influential, not so much for what we know about it, because in truth, we know little about it, but for what it represented for Western thinkers for a very considerable time and what is continued to signify in Europe until present times. There is evidence that there were Black Jews along the coast of what is today the Republic of Congo. Now, he says perhaps of Iberian origin, and I will blatantly disagree with him on that because that is his biasness based on the research that he has done on the Lusa Africans or on the Portuguese Jews who were Black, right? I disagree with him there because none of the sources say that they're from Iberia. This is why he adds perhaps. This is why you got to understand the lingo that they use when they make their papers. When you see perhaps, that's his opinion. You can get rid of that. He says, concentrated on the Vili kingdom of Luango between the equator and the mouth of Congo. The kingdom of Luango was a powerful, trading, centralized, pre-colonial African state. What? Pre-colonial African state. That's extremely important. Which survived well into the 19th century. The kingdom of Luango had a number of well-constructed towns, including the important wall trading town of Luango itself. Now, watch this. Let's get to the next point. Let me zoom in. All right, here it is right here. Look. Actually, let me go back to the previous page. My bad. So it says the first reference to a Black Jewish community in Luango, because remember he said there are numerous references, but here's one of the first. And Christian Oldendorf was one of the first references that made mention of the Igbo people to the Western world. This is serious stuff, but let's keep going. Let's understand this information. He says the first reference to a Black Jewish community in Luango is much later, and it comes from the pen of Christian George Andreas Oldendorf from 1721 to 1787. He says let me zoom in. The evangelical German theologian who in 1767 was sent to the Danish colonial possessions in the West Indies to write a report on the results of the mission of the Moravian Brethren in the islands. And I know because I have some extended family members from the Virgin Islands who is of that sect of Christianity. He says he worked hard and meticulously and produced a lengthy manuscript, only a third of which was initially published. The resulting work was published in 1777. In his book, he gave a good deal of detailed and credible information about Africa based on the testimony of who? Himself, of other white people, of slaves he interviewed. Slaves told him this. They'll tell you, hey, look, it was the colonialists that went over there to West Africa and they was teaching them the Bible, and that's how they learned about Judaism, and they told them they were children. Bro, what are you talking about? The slaves is telling him this. The slaves is telling him this. Okay, let's keep going. He says, his was the first written account, for instance, of the Igbo people, who happened again to be Semitically infused. Among other things, he mentioned the existence of a Black Jewish community in Luango. According to him, Jews have been expelled from Sao Tome, and it was from these banished Jews that these Black Portuguese and the Black Jews of Luango, who were despised even by the local Black population, were descended. So think about it. The Vili kingdom that has the Vili people in the Luango coast, if they are the raiders who are sourcing slaves to trade to Europeans, and there is a group of foreigners who they do not like that eventually disappears off the face of the earth somehow, who do you think they're going to find to raid and trade first? Their own people or the foreigners that they can source from first? Because this group disappeared. Nobody knows where they went, but they do know they were there before the transatlantic slave trade, and they were gone after. Let's watch this. Let's keep going. He says Oldendorf's informant gave further detail. This is an African slave telling him this. This is not no white European telling him this. He said the Jews were so despised by the Negroes, who he's saying is the indigenous African peoples, that they will not eat with them. They have their own burial ground, which is located far from the dwellings of the Negroes. And if you look in the egalitarian Northern Israelite practices, you'll see that this is one thing that they did. They buried the dead away from the dwellings of any other group. Their graves of masonry and figures of snake, lizards, and the like are painted on them by those who buried the body. This appears ridiculous to the Negroes, since such paintings are so dissimilar to Jewish practices. The key word is Jewish practices. But what if they're Israelites and not Jews? But again, in the mind of Oldendorp, he only knows about Jews. He doesn't know about native indigenous Israelites that lived amongst the other peoples for years. So his only understanding is that they're Jews, they're Jews, they're Jews, and they're called Jews. But that's not what they call themselves. This is what they're being called or labeled. Watch this. The assumption is, perhaps not probably, that the writing or letters of the Jewish graves appears to the Negroes to be pictures of snakes, lizards, and so forth. They could be using pictographic elements of ancient Hebrew. Who knows what was on there? I have no clue. But this is how it was interpreted by the natives there. Of course, the fact that these Jews did not eat with the local population is open to other interpretations than the refusal of the Negroes to eat with them. Was there any connection between these curious Jews mentioned by Oldendorp's observant slave and Jewish connections along the Loango coast, which would be your Sephardic Jews, your Portuguese Jews, suggested by some cartographers and geographers some 3 centuries before? Now, why is this important? Let me bring it home and I'm out of here. The reason why this is a complex issue is because I simply tell people there was not just one homogeneous group of Jews. Oldendorp's account is proof that there were more than one group of Jews that were there. There was some that was more in the interior, and there was some that lived along the coast. The ones that lived along the coast, some of them were the Portuguese Jews, who also was taken into slavery, right? But there was also another group. That other group is who I talk about. Now, my brother, Benaiah Israel, he talks about the Portuguese Jews that were labeled to be black Jews. Those are the Jews that he focuses on. I don't focus on those guys. I focus on the other ones who's always been there pre-colonial times. And we have the sources. This is not a game. This is not a game. This article is called No Witness to Bear by Tudor Parfit in the book Homelands and Diasporas, Perspectives of Jewish Culture in the Mediterranean and Beyond. And Tudor Parfit is an avid opponent of African Jewry today. So this is coming from information coming from an opponent of our community, not somebody who's writing propaganda agenda to support Israelite community. He's telling you there's numerous references to these people on the coast of Africa. And there's a reference to ones that were even on the coast, but there was some here in the Loango community. And if you understand the history of the Loango peoples, you know, you understand that they're divided from 5 major tribes that came from one ancestral mother and so forth, from a 5 sons that split up. You got to understand this history. I've done tons of reading and research on this. This is not to be played with. This is an extremely complex issue. I can see why my opponents do not want to subscribe to this or deal with this or address it or say it has anything to do with them. That's fine. On the flip side, there's a case that can be made that the infusion of those Jews happened amongst the natives. When they say, oh, well, I don't see them come over and say Yahweh and Jews. You don't know what language that these people were speaking and what they had. They could have had a divergent language family that incorporated some of the language of the locals there, because you'd have to do trade with them and do business with them in somebody else's kingdom, and maybe some elements of their own Israelite tongue. We don't know. We don't know. And coming over here to the Americas, guess what? There was a lot of mingling that took place over here. So by the time you start to interview these slaves, much later on, a lot of these interviews, most of the interviews were antebellum South during the early 1800s, and a lot of them were after the Civil War, where they're freed now and they can speak openly about things. We have some scant accounts before that, but most of the accounts are after that, when their voice was allowed to be heard and was on record. So by that time, they've already amalgamated. Okay. All right, so I'm done for tonight. I'm off the soapbox now. I just wanted to give this information so you guys understand that. Yes, Biafra is the Igbo only state, and I wish Biafra was successful today. Unfortunately, it's not. There's Igbo that's still rallying and protesting for that, and we need to get behind them because they identify as being Israelites. A lot of them fighting for the state. But then, you know, this is where, you know, you have these professors and scholars and specialists of African Judaic studies that say, oh, these were opportunistic Igbos that wanted to convert to being Jewish so they can get some form of assistance from the state of Israel. And they use that to discredit everything I just read to you. All right. And again, I'm just simply showing you the source and interpreting it. I'm not even showing you how I put it through those argumentative processes that I mentioned earlier. It's serious. We don't play games over here. This is the real deal over here. We don't play games. So anybody that needs our assistance to talk to a rabbi, a white Jew, a radio station, a TV station, another group, you can holler at KHM and we will put the cards on the table, right? And then we'll deal on the red table. All right. So with that being said, TRRIO, if your dad is obsessed with Biafra, I have some books you can give him that runs in alignment with Biafra and Israelite culture. It's deep. It's deep. It's deep. You know what I'm saying? So with that, family, thank you for watching. If anybody wants access to the library of all these sources, they will be on my Patreon. You can email me individually for it, but it may take some time for me to get to you, and I may only give you what you request, and you may not to see, you know, have an opportunity to get access to see everything that we offer. But if you sign up for our Patreon, www.patreon.com/DivineProspect, you can get access to all of these sources and more, and any PowerPoints from any lectures that I do. Anybody who's a patron, you get automatic access to it. You just request it. So this next PowerPoint that I'm working on, some of those slides you saw is from that PowerPoint that I'm working on. You'll see this information and how serious this information is. You'll see. It's serious. You got to know how to handle it. It's deep. And like the reference I made, I'll say this too. The reference I made in the book called Africa being an accurate description of the regions, the Egypt, Barbary, Libya, Bilal Dulagirid, the land of the Negroes, Guinea, Ethiopia, Aborigines, blah, blah, blah. That was written by John Ogilvy, you know, John Ogilvy's book called Africa, where he says as many Jews featured on this region along the Niger River that goes all the way from Senegambia and empties out in where? In Igbo land in Nigeria. He says that they found natives themselves, boasting to be Abraham's seeds, inhabiting both sides of the river. And then he says, and there's also Asian strangers who he says who fled from the Judean war of Vespasian, or from Judea, walled and depopulated by the Romans, the Persians, the Sassanians, and the chieftains. So what is this saying? There was always acknowledged to be two groups of Israelites. Well, a group of Israelites and a group of Jews. I'll put it like that. It was always a group of Jews and a group of Israelites, where the Israelites were the native peoples there that were Israelites, pre-colonial, and then these Jews were the Portuguese that came and settled in these regions. The Asian stranger alternative, which was the Jew, and then the native from Abraham's seed. I just showed you what happened in Luango. We see it all across the Niger River on opposite sides. You always had two groups, these Jews, the Asian variant Jews, and these indigenous looking Jews or Israelites that have already been there for a long period of time. And when we talk about this issue, it's complex, it's layered. You can't say all of these are the same groups of Jews and this and that. There's Jews that were foreigners that did trade in trans-Saharan Africa, some that came into sub-Saharan Africa, some that came along the coast. And then you have these blips of these indigenous ones that were there pre-colonial that settled there before the Portuguese were expelled, before Ashkenazim, Sephardim, before missionaries came in there. There were colonies of Jews that was already throughout West Africa. This is complex. It's layered. You cannot do hasty generalizations over here. You cannot use blanket terms to label all of these groups, because how are you parsing out to distinguish them from these other groups? Do you know their halakha? Do you know the minhagim that they're utilizing? What is it that you're looking at to say they're the same peoples? Okay. With that, family, thank you for watching. I appreciate y'all. He says, cuz you said the Chukwus own slaves. No. I said Aro Chukwu, which is one group amongst many of the Igbo peoples. If you Igbo, brother, which you are, you know there's many different types of Igbo peoples. Now, let me say this. It's different today than it was back then. From the records we had back then, a lot of different groups of people were called Igbo on the Bada Biafra, and a lot of them were not. Okay? And we understand the Ibibio peoples were also called Igbo peoples, but they were a separate ethnic group from the Igbo peoples, but they happened to be on the Bada Biafra, so they were called Igbo peoples, right? Aruchukwu was one of those many tribes. You can look it up, my brother. Look up the Aruchukwu peoples. If you want books and sources on it from Igbo scholars, I have it. I can give it to you. They were the ones that controlled the slave trade in Igbo land. You can look it up. In order for them to actually get an individual to yield to this oracle that told them you have to be a servant and then get put into slavery, they were supposed to consult with the Enri tribe, who were the priestly tribe amongst the Igbo people, and they were not. This was a conflict against them because even a war between the Arochukwu and the Enri ensued, and the Enri and the Europeans, because they got wind of what the Arochukwu were doing. Extremely complex, but it's deep nonetheless. It's interesting history that when you parse it out, you can see the Israelite element in it. All right. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. Again, family, sign up for our Patreon. You can get access to all this information. Yahoo Bendora, if you have the PDF, I do have the PDF. I will post it on Patreon, no problem. Thank you for your donation and your Patreon pledge, my brother. I appreciate that. Thank you everybody else in here for watching. Again, please sign up for our Patreon where the after party is there 365 24/7. All right, you get access to these sources and more information and articles and all types of fun stuff. All right, I appreciate you for watching. Thank you for committing your time to be here at this Freestyle Friday. Hopefully going through the argumentation processes and then these primary sources and interpretation of these sources in regards to Israelite identity help to further you along this walk. What I want to say is, family, subject yourself to the hand of the Most High, to the face of the Most High, and you can have what's in his hand. I say this all the time. Get to have that relationship with that creator, the patron deity of the forefathers. And once you have that relationship, which I say is at its purest form in ancient pre-Israelite culture, then whatever is in his hand, whatever he can supply you for your assignment along your journey, you will have, you will be entitled to. Right? Simply keeping a statute, laws, and commandments is not enough. You must have a circumcised heart, family. All right. So with that, family, I love you guys. Thank you for your support. Peace and shalom.